January, 1659-1660. Blessed be God, at the end of the last year I was in very good health, without any sense of my old pain, but upon taking of cold. I lived in Axe Yard, having my wife and servant Jane, and no more in family than us three. My wife gave me hopes of her being with child, but on the last day of the year the hope was belied. The condition of the state was thus, viz. The Rump, after being disturbed by my Lord Lambert, was lately returned to sit again. The officers of the army all forced to yield. Lawson lies still in the river, and Monk is with his army in Scotland. Only my Lord Lambert is not yet come into the Parliament, nor is it expected that he will without being forced to it. The new Common Council of the city do speak very high, and had sent to Monk their sword-bearer, to acquaint him with their desires for a free and full Parliament, which is at present the desires and the hopes and expectation of all. 22 of the old secluded members having been at the house door the last week to demand entrance, but it was denied them, and it is believed that neither they nor the people will be satisfied till the house be filled. My own private condition very handsome, and esteemed rich, but indeed very poor. Besides my goods of my house and my office, which at present is somewhat uncertain. Mr. Downing, master of my office. January 1st, Lord's Day. This morning, we living lately in the garret, I rose, put on my suit with great skirts, having not lately worn any other clothes but them. Went to Mr. Gunning's chapel at Exeter House, where he made a very good sermon upon these words, that in the fullness of time God sent his Son made of a woman, etc., showing that by made under the law is meant his circumcision, which is solemnized this day. Dined at home in the garret, where my wife dressed the remains of a turkey, and in the doing of it she burnt her hand. I stayed at home all the afternoon looking over my accounts, then went with my wife to my father's, and in going observed the great posts which the city have set up at the Conduit in Fleet Street. Supped at my father's, where in came Mrs. Theophila Turner and Madam Morris, and supped with us. After that my wife and I went home with them, and so to our own home. 2nd. In the morning, before I went forth, old East brought me a dozen of bottles of sack, and I gave him a shilling for his pains. Then I went to Mr. Shepley, who was drawing of sack in the wine cellar to send to other places as a gift from my Lord, and told me that my Lord had given him order to give me the dozen of bottles. Thence I went to the Temple to speak with Mr. Calthrop about the £60 due to my Lord, but missed of him, he being abroad. Then I went to Mr. Crews, and borrowed £10 of Mr. Andrews for my own use, and so went to my office, where there was nothing to do. Then I walked a great while in Westminster Hall, where I heard that Lambert was coming up to London, that my Lord Fairfax was in the head of the Irish Brigade, but it was not certain what he would declare for. The House was to-day upon finishing the Act for the Council of State, which they did, and for the indemnity to the soldiers, and were to sit again thereupon in the afternoon. Great talk that many places have declared for a free Parliament, and it is believed that they will be forced to fill up the House with the old members. From the Hall I called at home, and so went to Mr. Crews. My wife she was to go to her father's, thinking to have dined, but I came too late, so Mr. Moore and I and another gentleman went out and drank a cup of ale together in the New Market, and there I eat some bread and cheese for my dinner. After that Mr. Moore and I went as far as Fleet Street together, and parted, he going into the city, I to find Mr. Calthrop, but failed again of finding him, so returned to Mr. Crews again, and from thence went along with Mrs. Jemima home, and there she taught me how to play at cribbage. Then I went home, and finding my wife gone to see Mrs. Hunt, I went to Will's, and there sat with Mr. Ashwell talking and singing till 9 o'clock, and so home. There, having not eaten anything but bread and cheese, my wife cut me a slice of brawn, which I received from my lady, which proves as good as ever I had any. So to bed, and my wife had a very bad night of it through wind and cold. 3rd. I went out in the morning, it being a great frost, and walked to Mrs. Turner's to stop her from coming to see me to-day, because of Mrs. Jem's coming. Thence I went to the Temple to speak with Mr. Calthrop, and walked in his chamber an hour, but could not see him, so went to Westminster, where I found soldiers in my office to receive money, and paid it them. At noon went home, where Mrs. Jem, her maid, Mr. Shepley, Hawley, and Moore dined with me on a piece of beef and cabbage and a collar of brawn. We then fell to cards till dark, and then I went home with Mrs. Jem, and meeting Mr. Hawley got him to bear me company to Chancery Lane, where I spoke with Mr. Calthrop. He told me that Sir James Calthrop was lately dead, but that he would write to his lady, that the money may be speedily paid. Thence back to Whitehall, where I understood that the Parliament had passed the Act for indemnity to the soldiers and officers that would come in so many days, and that my Lord Lambert should have benefit of the said Act. They had also voted that all vacancies in the House, by the death of any of the old members, shall be filled up, but those that are living shall not be called in. Thence I went home, and there found Mr. Hunt and his wife and Mr. Hawley, who sat with me till 10 at night at cards, and so broke up and to bed. 4th. Early came Mr. Vantley to me for his half year's rent, which I had not in the house, but took his man to the office, and there paid him. Then I went down into the hall, and to Will's, where Hawley brought a piece of his Cheshire cheese, and we were merry with it. Then into the hall again, where I met with the clerk and quartermaster of my lord's troop, and took them to the Swan, and gave them their morning's draught, they being just come to town. Mr. Jenkins shewed me 2 bills of exchange for money to receive upon my lord's and my pay. It snowed hard all this morning, and was very cold, and my nose was much swelled with cold. Strange the difference of men's talk. Some say that Lambert must of necessity yield up, others that he is very strong, and that the Fifth Monarchy men will stick to him, if he declares for a free Parliament. Chillington was sent yesterday to him with a vote of pardon and indemnity from the Parliament. From the Hall I came home, where I found letters from Hinchinbroke, and news of Mr. Shepley's going thither the next week. I dined at home, and from thence went to Will's to Shaw, who promised me to go along with me to Atkinson's about some money, but I found him at cards with Spicer and D. Vines, and could not get him along with me. I was vexed at this, and went and walked in the hall, where I heard that the Parliament spent this day in fasting and prayer, and in the afternoon came letters from the north, that brought certain news that my Lord Lambert his forces were all forsaking him, and that he was left with only 50 horse, and that he did now declare for the Parliament himself, and that my Lord Fairfax did also rest satisfied, and had laid down his arms, and that what he had done was only to secure the country against my Lord Lambert his raising of money, and free quarter. I went to Will's again, where I found them still at cards, and Spicer had won 14 shillings of Shaw and Vines. Then I spent a little time with G. Vines and Maylard at Vines's at Arvyle's. So home, and from thence to Mr. Hunt's, and sat with them and Mr. Hawley at cards till 10 at night, and was much made of by them. Home and so to bed, but much troubled with my nose, which was much swelled. 5th. I went to my office, where the money was again expected from the Excise Office, but none brought, but was promised to be sent this afternoon. I dined with Mr. Shepley at my lord's lodgings upon his turkey pie, and so to my office again, where the excise money was brought, and some of it told to soldiers till it was dark. Then I went home, and after writing a letter to my lord, and told him the news that the Parliament hath this night voted that the members that were discharged from sitting in the years 1648 and 49 were duly discharged, and that there should be writs issued presently for the calling of others in their places, and that Monk and Fairfax were commanded up to town, and that the Prince's lodgings were to be provided for Monk at Whitehall. Then my wife and I, it being a great frost, went to Mrs. Jem's, in expectation to eat a sack posset, but Mr. Edward not coming, it was put off, and so I left my wife playing at cards with her, and went myself with my lantern to Mr. Fage, to consult concerning my nose, who told me it was nothing but cold, and after that we did discourse concerning public business, and he told me it is true the City had not time enough to do much, but they are resolved to shake off the soldiers, and that unless there be a free Parliament chosen, he did believe that half the Common Council will not levy any money by order of this Parliament. From thence I went to my father's, where I found Mrs. Ramsay and her grandchild, a pretty girl, and stayed a while and talked with them and my mother, and then took my leave. Only heard of an invitation to go to dinner to-morrow to my cousin Thomas Pepys. I went back to Mrs. Jem, and took my wife and Mrs. Shepley, and went home. 6th. This morning Mr. Shepley and I did eat our breakfast at Mrs. Harper's, my brother John being with me, upon a cold turkey pie and a goose. From thence I went to my office, where we paid money to the soldiers till 1 o'clock, at which time we made an end, and I went home and took my wife and went to my cousin Thomas Pepys, and found them just sat down to dinner, which was very good, only the venison pasty was palpable beef, which was not handsome. After dinner I took my leave, leaving my wife with my cousin Stradwick, and went to Westminster to Mr. Vines, where George and I fiddled a good while, Dick and his wife, who was lately brought to bed, and her sister being there. But Mr. Hudson not coming according to his promise, I went away, and calling at my house on the wench, I took her and the lantern with me to my cousin Stradwick, where after a good supper, there being there my father, mother, brothers, and sister, my cousin Scott and his wife, Mr. Drawwater and his wife, and her brother, Mr. Stradwick, we had a brave cake brought us, and in the choosing Paul was queen, and Mr. Stradwick was king. After that my wife and I bid adieu, and came home, it being still a great frost. 7th. At my office, as I was receiving money of the probate of wills, in came Mrs. Turner, Theophila, Madam Morris, and Joyce, and after I had done I took them home to my house, and Mr. Hawley came after, and I got a dish of steaks and a rabbit for them, while they were playing a game or two at cards. In the middle of our dinner, a messenger from Mr. Downing came to fetch me to him, so leaving Mr. Hawley there, I went and was forced to stay till night in expectation of the French ambassador, who at last came, and I had a great deal of good discourse with one of his gentlemen, concerning the reason of the difference between the zeal of the French and the Spaniard. After he was gone I went home, and found my friends still at cards, and after that I went along with them to Dr. Hawes, sending my wife to Mrs. Jem's to a sack posset, where I heard some symphony and songs of his own making, performed by Mr. May, Harding, and Mallard. Afterwards I put my friends into a coach and went to Mrs. Jem's, where I wrote a letter to my Lord by the post, and had my part of the posset which was saved for me, and so we went home and put in at my Lord's lodgings, where we stayed late, eating of part of his turkey pie, and reading of Quarles's Emblems. So home and to bed. 8th. Sunday. In the morning I went to Mr. Gunning's, where a good sermon, wherein he showed the life of Christ, and told us good authority for us to believe that Christ did follow his father's trade, and was a carpenter till 30 years of age. From thence to my father's to dinner, where I found my wife, who was forced to dine there, we not having one coal of fire in the house, and it being very hard frosty weather. In the afternoon my father, he going to a man's to demand some money due to my Aunt Bell's, my wife and I went to Mr. Mossum's, where a strange doctor made a very good sermon. From thence, sending my wife to my father's, I went to Mrs. Turner's and stayed a little while, and then to my father's, where I found Mr. Shepley, and after supper went home together. Here I heard of the death of Mr. Palmer, and that he is to be buried at Westminster to-morrow. 9th. For these 2 or 3 days I have been much troubled with thoughts how to get money to pay them that I have borrowed money of, by reason of my money being in my uncle's hands. I rose early this morning, and looked over and corrected my brother John's speech, which he is to make the next apposition. And after that I went towards my office, and in my way met with W. Simons, Muddiman, and Jack Price, and went with them to Harper's, and in many sorts of talk I stayed till 2 of the clock in the afternoon. I found Muddiman a good scholar, an arch rogue, and owns that though he writes new books for the Parliament, yet he did declare that he did it only to get money, and did talk very basely of many of them. Among other things, W. Simons told me how his uncle Scobell was on Saturday last called to the bar, for entering in the Journal of the House, for the year 1653, these words, "This day his Excellence the Lord General Cromwell dissolved this House," which words the Parliament voted a forgery, and demanded of him how they came to be entered. He answered that they were his own handwriting, and that he did it by virtue of his office, and the practice of his predecessor, and that the intent of the practice was to let posterity know how such and such a Parliament was dissolved, whether by the command of the King, or by their own neglect, as the last House of Lords was, and that to this end he had said and writ that it was dissolved by his Excellence the Lord General, and that for the word dissolved he never at the time did hear of any other term, and desired pardon if he would not dare to make a word himself, when it was 6 years after, before they came themselves to call it an interruption. But they were so little satisfied with this answer, that they did choose a committee to report to the House, whether this crime of Mr. Scobell's did come within the Act of Indemnity, or no. Thence I went with Muddiman to the coffee house, and gave 18d. to be entered of the club. Thence into the hall, where I heard for certain that Monk was coming to London, and that Bradshaw's 2 lodgings were preparing for him. Thence to Mrs. Jem's, and found her in bed, and she was afraid that it would prove the small-pox. Thence back to Westminster Hall, where I heard how Sir H. Vane was this day voted out of the House, and to sit no more there, and that he would retire himself to his house at Raby, as also all the rest of the 9 officers that had their commissions formerly taken away from them were commanded to their furthest houses from London during the pleasure of the Parliament. Here I met with the quartermaster of my Lord's troop, and his clerk Mr. Jennings, and took them home, and gave them a bottle of wine and the remainder of my collar of brawn, and so good night. After that came in Mr. Hawley, who told me that I was missed this day at my office, and that tomorrow I must pay all the money that I have, at which I was put to a great loss how I should get money to make up my cash, and so went to bed in great trouble. 10th. Went out early, and in my way met with Greatorex, and at an alehouse he showed me the first sphere of wire that ever he made, and indeed it was very pleasant. Thence to Mr. Crews, and borrowed £10, and so to my office, and was able to pay my money. Thence into the hall, and meeting the quartermaster, Jennings, and Captain Ryder, we 4 went to a cook's to dinner. Thence Jennings and I into London, it being through heat of the sun a great thaw and dirty, to show our bills of return, and coming back drank a pint of wine at the Star in Cheapside. So to Westminster, overtaking Captain Oakshott in his silk cloak, whose sword got hold of many people in walking. Thence to the coffee house, where were a great confluence of gentlemen, viz. Mr. Harrington, Pulteney, chairman, Gold, Dr. Petty, etc., where admirable discourse till at night. Thence with Doling to Mother Lamb's, who told me how this day Scott was made Intelligencer, and that the rest of the members that were objected against last night, their business was to be heard this day se'nnight. Thence I went home and wrote a letter, and went to Harper's, and stayed there till Tom carried it to the postboy at Whitehall. So home to bed. 11th. Being at Will's with Captain Barker, who hath paid me £300 this morning at my office, in comes my father, and with him I walked, and leave him at W. Joyce's, and went myself to Mr. Crew's, but came too late to dine, and therefore after a game at shuttlecock's, with Mr. Walgrave and Mr. Edward, I returned to my father, and taking him from W. Joyce's, who was not abroad himself, we inquired of a porter, and by his direction went to an alehouse, where after a cup or two we parted. I went towards London, and in my way went in to see Crowley, who was now grown a very great loon, and very tame. Thence to Mr. Stevens with a pair of silver snuffers, and bought a pair of shears to cut silver, and so homeward again. From home I went to see Mrs. Jem, who was in bed, and now granted to have the small-pox. Back again, and went to the coffee house, but tarried not, and so home. 12th. I drink my morning at Harper's with Mr. Shepley and a seaman, and so to my office, where Captain Holling came to see me, and appointed a meeting in the afternoon. Then wrote letters to Hinchinbroke, and sealed them at Will's, and after that went home, and thence to the Half Moon, where I found the Captain and Mr. Billingsley and Newman, a barber, where we were very merry, and had the young man that plays so well on the Welsh harp. Billingsley paid for all. Thence home, and finding my letters this day not gone by the carrier, I new sealed them, but my brother Tom coming, we fell into discourse about my intention to feast the Joyces. I sent for a bit of meat for him from the cook's, and forgot to send my letters this night. So I went to bed, and in discourse broke to my wife what my thoughts were concerning my design of getting money by, etc. 13th. Coming in the morning to my office, I met with Mr. Fage, and took him to the Swan. He told me how High Hazelrigg and Morley the last night began at my Lord Mayor's to exclaim against the City of London, saying that they had forfeited their charter, and how the Chamberlain of the City did take them down, letting them know how much they were formerly beholding to the City, etc. He also told me that Monk's letter that came to them by the sword-bearer was a cunning piece, and that which they did not much trust to, but they were resolved to make no more applications to the Parliament, nor to pay any money, unless the secluded members be brought in, or a free Parliament chosen. Thence to my office, where nothing to do. So to Will's with Mr. Pinkney, who invited me to their feast at his hall the next Monday. Thence I went home, and took my wife and dined at Mr. Wade's, and after that we went and visited Caton. From thence home again, and my wife was very unwilling to let me go forth, but with some discontent would go out if I did. And I going forth towards Whitehall, I saw she followed me, and so I stayed and took her round through Whitehall, and so carried her home angry. Thence I went to Mrs. Jem, and found her up and merry, and that it did not prove the small-pox, but only the swine-pox. So I played a game or two at cards with her. And so to Mr. Vine's, where he and I and Mr. Hudson played half a dozen things, there being there Dick's wife and her sister. After that I went home, and found my wife gone abroad to Mr. Hunt's, and came in a little after me. So to bed. 14th. Nothing to do at our office. Thence into the Hall, and just as I was going to dinner from Westminster Hall with Mr. Moore, with whom I had been in the lobby to hear news, and had spoke with Sir Anthony Ashley Cooper about my Lord's lodgings, to his house. I met with Captain Holland, who told me that he hath brought his wife to my house, so I posted home and got a dish of meat for them. They stayed with me all the afternoon, and went hence in the evening. Then I went with my wife, and left her at market, and went myself to the coffee house, and heard exceeding good argument against Mr. Harrington's assertion that overbalance of propriety was the foundation of government. Home, and wrote to Hinchinbroke, and sent that and my other letter that missed of going on Thursday last. So to bed. 15th. Having been exceedingly disturbed in the night with the barking of a dog of one of our neighbours, that I could not sleep for an hour or two, I slept late, and then in the morning took physic, and so stayed within all day. At noon my brother John came to me, and I corrected as well as I could his Greek speech to say the apposition, though I believe he himself was as well able to do it as myself. After that we went to read in the Great Official about the blessing of bells in the Church of Rome. After that my wife and I in pleasant discourse till night, then I went to supper, and after that to make an end of this week's notes in this book, and so to bed. It being a cold day and a great snow, my physic did not work so well as it should have done. 16th. In the morning I went up to Mr. Crews, and at his bedside he gave me direction to go to-morrow with Mr. Edward to Twickenham, and likewise to talk to me concerning things of state, and express his mind how just it was that the secluded members should come to sit again. I went from thence, and in my way went into an alehouse, and drank my morning draught with Matthew Andrews, and 2 or 3 more of his friends, coachmen. And of one of them I did hire a coach to carry us to-morrow to Twickenham. From thence to my office, where nothing to do. But Mr. Downing he came, and found me all alone, and did mention to me his going back into Holland, and did ask me whether I would go or no, but gave me little encouragement, but bid me consider of it, and asked me whether I did not think that Mr. Hawley could perform the work of my office alone or no. I confess I was at a great loss all the day after, to bethink myself how to carry this business. At noon Harry et al. Came to me, and went along with Mr. Maylard, by coach, as far as Salisbury Court, and there we set him down, and we went to the clerk's, where we came a little too late, but in a closet we had a very good dinner by Mr. Pinkney's courtesy, and after dinner we had pretty good singing, and one Hazard sung alone after the old fashion, which was very much cried up, but I did not like it. Thence we went to the Green Dragon on Lambeth Hill, both the Mr. Pinkneys, Smith, Harrison Morris, that sang the bass, Shepley and I, and there we sang of all sorts of things, and I ventured with good success upon things at first sight, and after that I played on my flageolet, and stayed there till 9 o'clock, very merry, and drawn on with one song after another till it came to be so late. After that, Shepley, Harrison, and myself, we went towards Westminster on foot, and at the Golden Lion near Charing Cross we went in and drank a pint of wine, and so parted, and thence home, where I found my wife and maid a-washing. I stayed up till the bellman came by with his bell just under my window, as I was writing of this very line, and cried, "Past 1 of the clock, and a cold, frosty, windy morning." I then went to bed, and left my wife and the maid a-washing still. 17th. Early I went to Mr. Crews, and having given Mr. Edward money to give the servants, I took him into the coach that waited for us, and carried him to my house, where the coach waited for me, while I and the child went to Westminster Hall, and bought him some pictures. In the hall I met Mr. Woodfine, and took him to Will's, and drank with him. Thence the child and I to the coach, where my wife was ready, and so we went towards Twickenham. In our way, at Kensington, we understood how that my Lord Chesterfield had killed another gentleman about half an hour before, and was fled. We went forward, and came about 1 of the clock to Mr. Fuller's, but he was out of town. So we had a dinner there, and I gave the child 40 shillings to give to the 2 ushers. After that we parted, and went homewards, it being market day at Brainford. I set my wife down, and went with the coach to Mr. Crews, thinking to have spoke with Mr. Moore and Mrs. Jem, he having told me the reason of his melancholy was some unkindness from her after so great expressions of love, and how he had spoke to her friends and had their consent, and that he would desire me to take an occasion of speaking with her, but by no means not to heighten her discontent or distaste, whatever it be, but to make it up if I can. But he being out of doors, I went away and went to see Mrs. Jem, who was now very well again, and after a game or 2 at cards I left her. So I went to the Coffee Club, and heard very good discourse. It was in answer to Mr. Harrington's answer, who said that the state of the Roman government was not a settled government, and so it was no wonder that the balance of propriety was in one hand, and the command in another, it being therefore always in a posture of war, but it was carried by ballot, that it was a steady government, though it is true by the voices it had been carried before, that it was an unsteady government. So to-morrow it is to be proved by the opponents that the balance lay in one hand, and the government in another. Thence I went to Westminster, and met Shaw and Washington, who told me how this day Sydenham was voted out of the House for sitting any more this Parliament, and that Salloway was voted out likewise and sent to the Tower, during the pleasure of the House. Home, and wrote by the post, and carried to Whitehall, and coming back turned in at Harper's, where Jack Price was, and I drank with him, and he told me, among other things, how much the Protector is altered, though he would seem to bear out his trouble very well, yet he is scarce able to talk sense with a man, and how he will say that, who should a man trust if he may not trust to a brother and an uncle, and how much those men have to answer before God Almighty for their playing the knave with him as they did. He told me also, that there was 100,000 offered, and would have been taken for his restitution, had not the Parliament come in as they did again, and that he do believe that the Protector will live to give a testimony of his valour and revenge yet before he dies, and that the Protector will say so himself sometimes. Thence I went home, it being late, and my wife in bed. 18th. To my office, and from thence to Will's, and there Mr. Shepley brought me letters from the carrier, and so I went home. After that to Wilkinson's, where we had a dinner for Mr. Talbot, Adams, Pinkney, and his son, but his son did not come. Here we were very merry, and while I was here Mr. Fuller came thither, and stayed a little while. After that we all went to my Lord's, whither came afterwards Mr. Harrison, and by chance seeing Mr. Butler coming by, I called him in, and so we sat drinking a bottle of wine till night. At which time Mistress Anne came with the key of my Lord's study for some things, and so we all broke up, and after I had gone to my house and interpreted my Lord's letter by his character, I came to her again and went with her to her lodging, and from thence to Mr. Crew's, where I advised with him what to do about my Lord's lodgings, and what answer to give to Sir Anthony Cooper, and so I came home and to bed. All the world is at a loss to think what Monk will do, the City saying that he will be for them, and the Parliament saying he will be for them.
19th. This morning I was sent for to Mr. Downing, and at his bedside he told me that he had a kindness for me, and that he thought that he had done me one, and that was, that he had got me to be one of the clerks of the council, at which I was a little stumbled, and could not tell what to do, whether to thank him or no, but by and by I did, but not very heartily, for I feared that his doing of it was but only to ease himself of the salary which he gives me. After that, Mr. Shepley staying below all this time for me, we went thence and met Mr. Pierce. So at the Harp and Ball, drank our morning draught, and so to Whitehall, where I met with Sir Anthony Cooper, and did give him some answer from my Lord, and he did give us leave to keep the lodging still. And so we did determine thereupon that Mr. Shepley might now go into the country, and would do so tomorrow. Back I went by Mr. Downing's order, and stayed there till 12 o'clock, in expectation of one to come to read some writings, but he came not. So I stayed all alone, reading the answer of the Dutch ambassador to our state, in answer to the reasons of my Lord's coming home, which he gave for his coming, and did labour herein to contradict my Lord's arguments for his coming home. Thence to my office, and so with Mr. Shepley and Moore to dine upon a turkey with Mrs. Jem. And after that Mr. Moore and I went to the French ordinary, where Mr. Downing this day feasted Sir Arthur Haselrig, and a great many more of the Parliament, and did stay to put him in mind of me. Here he gave me a note to go and invite some other members to dinner tomorrow. So I went to Whitehall, and did stay at Marsh's with Simons, Llewellyn, and all the rest of the clerks of the council, who I hear are all turned out, only the 2 Lees, and they do all tell me that my name was mentioned the last night, but that nothing was done in it. Hence I went, and did leave some of my notes at the lodgings of the members, and so home to bed. 20th. In the morning I went to Mr. Downing's bedside, and gave him an account what I had done as to his guests, and I went thence to my Lord Widdrington, who I met in the street, going to seal the patents for the judges to-day, and so could not come to dinner. I called upon Mr. Calthrop about the money due to my Lord. Here I met with Mr. Woodfine, and drank with him at the Sun in Chancery Lane, and so to Westminster Hall, where at the lobby I spoke with the rest of my guests, and so to my office. At noon went by water with Mr. Maylard and Hales to the Swan in Fish Street at our gold feast, where we were very merry at our Joel of Ling. And from thence, after a great and good dinner, Mr. Falkenberg would go drink a cup of ale at a place where I had like to have shot at a scholar that lay over the House of Office. Thence calling on Mr. Stevens and Wotton, with whom I drank, about business of my Lord's, I went to the Coffee Club, where there was nothing done but choosing of a committee for orders. Thence to Westminster Hall, where Mrs. Lane and the rest of the maids had their white scarfs, all having been at the burial of a young bookseller in the hall. Thence to Mr. Shepley's, and took him to my house and drank with him in order to his going tomorrow. So parted, and I sat up late, making up my accounts before he go. This day 3 citizens of London went to meet Monk from the Common Council. 21st. Up early and finishing my accounts, and writing to my Lord, and from thence to my Lord's, and took leave of Mr. Shepley, and possession of all the keys in the house. Thence to my office for some money to pay Mr. Shepley, and sent it him by the old man. I then went to Mr. Downing, who chid me, because I did not give him notice of some of his guests failed him, but I told him that I sent our porter to tell him, and he was not within, but he told me that he was within till past 12 o'clock, so the porter or he lied. Thence to my office, where nothing to do. Then with Mr. Hawley, he and I went to Mr. Crew's and dined there. Thence into London, to Mr. Vernon's, and I received my £25 due by bill for my troopers' pay. Then back again to Stedman's, at the Mitre in Fleet Street, in our way calling on Mr. Fage, who told me how the City have some hopes of Monk. Thence to the Mitre, where I drank a pint of wine, the house being in fitting for Bannister to come hither from Paget's. Thence to Mrs. Jem, and gave her £5.
So home and left my money, and to Whitehall, where Llewellyn and I drank and talked together an hour at Marsh's, and so up to the clerk's room, where poor Mr. Cook, a black man, that is like to be put out of his clerk's place, came and railed at me for endeavouring to put him out and get myself in, when I was already in a good condition. But I satisfied him, and after I had wrote a letter there to my Lord, wherein I gave him an account how this day Lenthall took his chair again, and the House resolved a declaration to be brought in on Monday next, to satisfy the world what they intend to do. So home and to bed. 22nd. I went in the morning to Mr. Messum's, where I met with W. Thurban, and sat with him in his pew. A very eloquent sermon about the duty of all to give good example in our lives and conversation, which I fear he himself was most guilty of not doing. After sermon, at the door by appointment my wife met me, and so to my father's to dinner, where we had not been to my shame in a fortnight before. After dinner my father shewed me a letter from Mr. Widdrington of Christ College in Cambridge, wherein he do express very great kindness for my brother, and my father intends that my brother shall go to him. To church in the afternoon to Mr. Herring, where a lazy poor sermon, and so home with Mrs. Turner, and sitting with her a while we went to my father's, where we supped very merry, and so home. This day I began to put on buckles to my shoes, which I have bought yesterday of Mr. Wotton. 23rd. In the morning called out to carry £20 to Mr. Downing, which I did, and came back, and finding Mr. Pierce the surgeon, I took him to the Axe and gave him his morning draught. Thence to my office, and there did nothing but make up my balance. Came home and found my wife dressing of the girl's head, by which she was made to look very pretty. I went out and paid Wilkinson what I did owe him, and brought a piece of beef home for dinner. Thence I went out and paid Waters the vintner, and went to see Mrs. Jem, where I found my Lady Wright, but Scott was so drunk that he could not be seen. Here I stayed and made up Mrs. Ann's bills, and played a game or two at cards, and thence to Westminster Hall, it being very dark. I paid Mrs. Mitchell my bookseller, and back to Whitehall, and in the garden, going through to the stone gallery, I fell into a ditch, it being very dark. At the clerk's chamber I met with Simons and Llewellyn, and went with them to Mr. Mount's chamber at the Cockpit, where we had some rare pot venison, and ale to abundance till almost 12 at night, and after a song round we went home. This day the Parliament sat late, and resolved of the Declaration to be printed for the people's satisfaction, promising them a great many good things. 24th. In the morning to my office, where, after I had drank my morning draught at Will's, with Ethel and Mr. Stevens, I went and told part of the excise money till 12 o'clock, and then called on my wife, and took her to Mr. Pierce's, she in the way being exceedingly troubled with a pair of new patterns, and I vexed to go so slow, it being late. There when we came we found Mrs. Carrick very fine, and one Mr. Lucy, who called one another husband and wife, and after dinner a great deal of mad stir. There was pulling off Mrs. Bride's and Mr. Bridegroom's ribbons, with a great deal of fooling among them, that I and my wife did not like. Mr. Lucy and several other gentlemen coming in after dinner, swearing and singing as if they were mad, only he singing very handsomely. There came in afterwards Mr. Southern, clerk to Mr. Blackburn, and with him Lambert, lieutenant of my Lord's ship, and brought with them the Declaration that came out to-day from the Parliament, wherein they declare for law and gospel, and for tithes, but I do not find people apt to believe them. After this taking leave I went to my father's, and my wife staying there, he and I went to speak with Mr. Crumlin. In the mean time, while it was 5 o'clock, he being in the school, we went to my cousin Tom Pepys's shop, the turner in Paul's churchyard, and drank with him a pot of ale. He gave my father directions what to do about getting my brother an exhibition, and spoke very well of my brother. Thence back with my father home, where he and I spoke privately in the little room to my sister Paul, about stealing of things as my wife's scissors and my maid's book, at which my father was much troubled. Hence home with my wife, and so to Whitehall, where I met with Mr. Hunt and Llewellyn, and drank with them at Marsh's, and afterwards went up and wrote to my Lord by the post. This day the Parliament gave order that the late Committee of Safety should come before them this day se'nnight, and all their papers and their model of government that they had made to be brought in with them. So home, and talked with my wife about our dinner on Thursday. 25th. Called up early to Mr. Downing. He gave me a character, such a one as my Lord's, to make perfect, and likewise gave me his order for £500 to carry to Mr. Frost, which I did, and so to my office, where I did do something about the character till 12 o'clock. Then home, and found my wife and the maid at my Lord's, getting things ready against to-morrow. I went by water to my uncle White's to dinner, where I met my father, where we alone had a fine jowl of ling to dinner. After dinner I took leave, and coming home, heard that in Cheapside there had been but a little before a gibbet set up, and the picture of Hewson hung upon it in the middle of the street. I called at Paul's Churchyard, where I bought Buxtorf's Hebrew Grammar, and read a declaration of the gentleman of Northampton, which came out this afternoon. Thence to my father's, where I stayed with my mother a while, and then to Mr. Crew's, about a picture to be sent into the country, of Mr. Thomas Crew, to my Lord. So to my Lady Wright to speak with her, but she was abroad. So Mr. Evans, her butler, had me into his buttery, and gave me sack and a lesson on his lute, which he played very well. Thence I went to my Lord's, and got most things ready against to-morrow, as fires and laying the cloth, and my wife was making of her tarts and larding of her pullets till 11 o'clock. This evening Mr. Downing sent for me, and gave me order to go to Mr. Jessop for his papers, concerning his dispatch to Holland, which were not ready, only his order for a ship to transport him he gave me. To my Lord's again, and so home with my wife, tired with this day's work. 26th. To my office for £20 to carry to Mr. Downing, which I did, and back again. Then came Mr. Frost to pay Mr. Downing his £500, and I went to him for the warrant, and brought it Mr. Frost. Called for some papers at Whitehall for Mr. Downing, one of which was an order of the Council for £1800 per annum, to be paid monthly, and the other two, orders to the Commissioners of Customs, to let his goods pass free. Home from my office to my Lord's lodgings, where my wife had got ready a very fine dinner, viz., a dish of marrow bones, a leg of mutton, a loin of veal, a dish of fowl, 3 pullets, and 2 dozen of larks, all in a dish, a great tart, a neat's tongue, a dish of anchovies, a dish of prawns and cheese. My company was my father, my uncle Fenner, his 2 sons, Mr. Pierce, and all their wives, and my brother Tom. We were as merry as I could frame myself to be in the company. W. Joyce talking after the old rate, and drinking hard, vexed his father and mother and wife. And I did perceive that Mrs. Pierce her coming so gallant, that it put the 2 young women quite out of courage. When it became dark they all went away but Mr. Pierce, and W. Joyce, and their wives, and Tom, and drank a bottle of wine afterwards, so that Will did heartily vex his father and mother by staying, at which I and my wife were much pleased. Then they all went, and I fell to writing of 2 characters for Mr. Downing, and carried them to him at 9 o'clock at night, and he did not like them, but corrected them, so that to-morrow I am to do them anew. To my Lord's lodging again, and sat by the great log, it being now a very good fire, with my wife, and ate a bit, and so home. The news this day is a letter that speaks absolutely Monk's concurrence with this Parliament, and nothing else, which yet I hardly believe. After dinner to-day my father showed me a letter from my uncle Robert, in answer to my last, concerning my money, which I would have out of my cousin Beck's hand, wherein Beck desires it 4 months longer, which I know not how to spare. 27th. Going to my office, I met with Tom Newton, my old comrade, and took him to the Crown in the Palace, and gave him his morning draught. And as he always did talk very high what he would do with the Parliament, that he would have what place he would, and that he might be one of the clerks to the Council if he would. Here I stayed talking with him till the offices were all shut, and then I looked in the hall, and was told by my bookseller, Mrs. Mitchell, that Mr. G. Montague had inquired there for me. So I went to his house, and was forced by him to dine with him, and had a plenteous brave dinner, and the greatest civility that ever I had from any man. Thence home, and so to Mrs. Jem, and played with her at cards, and coming home again my wife told me that Mr. Hawley had been there to speak with me, and seemed angry that I had not been at the office that day, and she told me she was afraid that Mr. Downing may have a mind to pick some hole in my coat. So I made haste to him, but found no such thing from him, but he sent me to Mr. Sherwin's, about getting Mr. Squibb to come to him to-morrow, and I carried him an answer. So home, and fell a-writing the characters for Mr. Downing, and about 9 at night Mr. Hawley came, and after he was gone I sat up till almost 12 writing, and wrote 2 of them. In the morning up early and wrote another, my wife lying in bed and reading to me. 28th. I went to Mr. Downing and carried him 3 characters, and then to my office and wrote another, while Mr. Frost stayed telling money. And after I had done it Mr. Hawley came into the office, and I left him and carried it to Mr. Downing, who then told me that he was resolved to be gone for Holland this morning. So I to my office again, and dispatched my business there, and came with Mr. Hawley to Mr. Downing's lodging, and took Mr. Squibb from Whitehall in a coach thither with me, and there we waited in his chamber a great while till he came in, and in the meantime sent all his things to the barge that lay at Charing Cross stairs. Then came he in and took a very civil leave of me, beyond my expectation, for I was afraid that he would have told me something of removing me from my office, but he did not, but that he would do me any service that lay in his power. So I went down and sent a porter to my house for my best fur cap, but he coming too late with it, I did not present it to him. Thence I went to Westminster Hall, and bound up my cap at Mrs. Mitchell's, who was much taken with my cap, and endeavoured to overtake the coach at the Exchange, and to give it him there, but I met with one that told me that he was gone. And so I returned, and went to Heaven, where Llewellyn and I dined on a breast of mutton all alone, discoursing of the changes that we have seen, and the happiness of them that have estates of their own, and so parted, and I went by appointment to my office, and paid young Mr. Walton £500. It being very dark, he took £300 by content. He gave me half a piece, and carried me in his coach to St. Clement's, from whence I went to Mr. Crewe's, and made even with Mr. Andrews, and took in all my notes, and gave him one for all. Then to my Lady Wright, and gave her my Lord's letter, which he bade me give her privately. So home, and then to Will's for a little news, then came home again, and wrote to my Lord, and so to Whitehall, and gave them to the postboy. Back again home, and to bed. 29th. In the morning I went to Mr. Gunning's, where he made an excellent sermon upon the 2nd of the Galatians, about the difference that fell between St. Paul and St. Peter, the feast day of St. Paul being a day or two ago, whereby he did prove that, contrary to the doctrine of the Roman Church, St. Paul did never own any dependence, or that he was inferior to St. Peter, but that they were equal, only one a particular charge of preaching to the Jews, and the other to the Gentiles. Here I met with Mr. Moore, and went home with him to dinner to Mr. Crewe's, where Mr. Spurrier being in town, did dine with us. From thence I went home, and spent the afternoon in casting up my accounts, and do find myself to be worth £40 and more, which I did not think, but am afraid that I have forgot something. To my father's to supper, where I heard by my brother Tom how W. Joyce would the other day have Mr. Pierce and his wife to the tavern, after they were gone from my house, and that he had so little manners as to make Tom pay his share, notwithstanding that he went upon his account. And by my father I understand that my uncle Fenner and my aunt were much pleased with our entertaining them. After supper home, without going to see Mrs. Turner. 30th. This morning, before I was up, I fell a singing of my song, Great, Good, and Just, etc., and put myself thereby in mind, that this was the fatal day, now 10 years since, his Majesty died. Scull the waterman came, and brought me a note from the Hope, from Mr. Hawley, with direction about his money, he tarrying there till his master be gone. To my office, where I received money of the excise of Mr. Ruddier, and after we had done went to Will's, and stayed there till 3 o'clock, and then, I taking my £12 10s. Due to me for my last quarter's salary, I went with them by water to London, to the house where Signor Toriano used to be, and stayed there a while with Mr. Ashwell, Spicer, and Ruddier. Then I went and paid £12 17s. 6d. due from me to Captain Dick Matthews, according to his direction the last week in a letter. After that I came back by water, playing on my flageolet, and not finding my wife come home again from her father's, I went and sat a while and played at cards with Mrs. Jem, whose maid had newly got an ague, and was ill thereupon. So homewards again, having great need to do my business, and so pretending to meet Mr. Shott the woodmonger of Whitehall, I went and eased myself at the Harp and Ball, and thence home, where I sat writing till bedtime, and so to bed. There seems now to be a general cease of talk, it being taken for granted that Monk do resolve to stand to the Parliament, and nothing else. Spent a little time this night in knocking up nails for my hat and cloaks in my chamber. 31st. In the morning I fell to my lute till 9 o'clock, then to my Lord's lodgings, and set out a barrel of soap to be carried to Mrs. Ann. Here I met with Nick Bartlett, one that had been a servant of my Lord's at sea, and at Harper's gave him his morning draught. So to my office, where I paid £1200 to Mr. Frost, and at noon went to Will's, to give one of the excise office a pot of ale, that came to-day to tell over a bag of his that wanted £7 in it, which he found over in another bag. Then home, and dined with my wife, when in came Mr. Hawley, newly come from shipboard from his master, and brought me a letter of direction what to do in his lawsuit with Squibb about his house and office. After dinner to Westminster Hall, where all we clerks had orders to wait upon the committee, at the Star Chamber that is to try Colonel Jones, and were to give an account what money we had paid him. But the committee did not sit to-day. Hence to Will's, where I sat an hour or two with Mr. Godfrey Austin, a scrivener in King Street. Here I met, and afterwards brought the answer to General Monk's letter, which is a very good one, and I keep it by me. Thence to Mrs. Jem, where I found her maid in bed in a fit of the ague, and Mrs. Jem among the people below at work, and by she came up hot and merry, as if they had given her wine, at which I was troubled, but said nothing. After a game at cards, I went home and wrote by the post, and coming back, called in at Harper's, and drank with Mr. Pulford, servant to Mr. Waterhouse, who tells me that, whereas my Lord Fleetwood should have answered to the Parliament to day, he wrote a letter and desired a little more time, he being a great way out of time; and how that he is quite ashamed of himself, and confesses how he had deserved this for his baseness to his brother; and that he is like to pay part of the money, paid out of the Exchequer during the Committee of Safety, out of his own purse again, which I am glad of. Home and to bed, leaving my wife reading in Polexandra. I could find nothing in Mr. Downing's letter which Hawley brought me, concerning my office, but I could discern that Hawley had a mind that I would get to be Clerk of the Council. I suppose that he might have the greater salary, but I think it not safe yet to change this for a public employment. End of January. February, 1659, 1660. February 1st. In the morning, went to my office, where afterwards the old man brought me my letters from the carrier. At noon I went home, and dined with my wife on pease porridge, and nothing else. After that I went to the Hall, and there met with Mr. Swan, and went with him to Mr. Downing's counsellor, who did put me in very little hopes about the business between Mr. Downing and Squib, and told me that Squib would carry it against him, at which I was much troubled, and with him went to Lincoln's Inn, and there spoke with his attorney, who told me the day that was appointed for the trial. From thence I went to Sir Harry Wright's, and got him to give me his hand for the £60, which I am to-morrow to receive from Mr. Calthrop, and from thence to Mrs. Jem, and spoke with Madam Scott and her husband, who did promise to have the thing for her neck done this week. Thence home, and took Gammer East, and James the porter, a soldier, to my Lord's lodgings, who told me how they were drawn into the field to-day, and that they were ordered to march away to-morrow, to make room for General Monk. But they did shut their Colonel Fitch, and the rest of the officers, out of the field, and swore they would not go without their money, and if they would not give it them, they would go where they might have it, and that was the city. So the Colonel went to the Parliament, and commanded what money could be got, to be got against to-morrow for them, and all the rest of the soldiers in town, who in all places made a mutiny this day, and do agree together. Here I took some bedding to send to Mrs. Ann, for her to lie in, now she hath her fits of the ague. Thence I went to Will's, and stayed like a fool there, and played at cards till 9 o'clock, and so came home, where I found Mr. Hunt and his wife, who stayed and sat with me till 10 o'clock, and so good night. 2nd. Drank at Harper's with Doling, and so to my office, where I found all the officers of the regiments in town, waiting to receive money, that their soldiers might go out of town, and what was in the Exchequer they had. At noon, after dining at home, I called at Harper's for Doling, and he and I met with Llewellyn, and drank with him at the Exchequer at Charing Cross, and thence he and I went to the Temple, to Mr. Calthrop's chamber, and from thence had his man by water to London Bridge, to Mr. Calthrop, a grocer, and received £60 for my Lord. In our way we talked with our waterman, White, who told us how the watermen had lately been abused by some that had a desire to get in to be watermen to the state, and had lately presented an address of 9 or 10,000 hands to stand by this Parliament, when it was only told them that it was to a petition against hackney coaches, and that to-day they had put out another to undeceive the world and to clear themselves, and that among the rest Crop, my waterman, and one of great practice, was one that did cheat them thus. After I had received the money, we went to the Bridge Tavern, and drank a quart of wine, and so back by water, landing Mr. Calthrop's man at the Temple, and we went homewards. But over against Somerset House, hearing the noise of guns, we landed, and found the Strand full of soldiers. So I took my money, and went to Mrs. Johnson, my Lord Sempstress, and giving her my money to lay up, Doling and I went upstairs to a window, and looked out, and see the foot face the horse, and beat them back, and stood bawling and calling in the street for a free Parliament, and money. By and by a drum was heard to beat a march, coming towards them, and they got all ready again, and faced them, and they proved to be of the same mind with them, and so they made a great deal of joy to see one another. After all this, I took my money, and went home on foot, and laying up my money, and changing my stockings and shoes, I this day having left off my great skirt suit, and put on my white suit with silver lace coat, and went over to Harper's, where I met with W. Simons, Doling, Llewellyn, and 3 merchants, one of which had occasion to use a porter. So they sent for one, and James the soldier came, who told us how they had been all day and night upon their guard at St. James's, and that through the whole town they did resolve to stand to what they had began, and that to-morrow he did believe they would go into the city, and be received there. After all this we went to a sport called Selling of a Horse for a Dish of Eggs and Herrings, and sat talking there till almost 12 o'clock, and then parted. They were to go as far as Aldgate. Home and to bed. 3rd. Drank my morning draught at Harper's, and was told there that the soldiers were all quiet upon promise of pay. Thence to St. James's Park, and walked there to my place for my flageolet, and then played a little, it being a most pleasant morning, and sunshine. Back to Whitehall, where in the guard chamber I saw about 30 or 40 prentices of the city, who were taken at 12 o'clock last night, and brought prisoners hither. Thence to my office, where I paid a little more money to some of the soldiers under Lieutenant Colonel Miller, who held out the Tower against the Parliament, after it was taken away from Fitch by the Committee of Safety, and yet he continued in his office. About noon Mrs. Turner came to speak with me, and Joyce, and I took them and shewed them the manner of the House's sitting, the doorkeeper very civilly opening the door for us. Thence with my cousin Roger Pepys, it being term time, we took him out of the hall to Prior's, the Rhenish wine-house, and there had a pint or 2 of wine and a dish of anchovies, and bespoke 3 or 4 dozen bottles of wine for him against his wedding. After this done he went away, and left me order to call and pay for all that Mrs. Turner would have. So we called for nothing more there, but went and bespoke a shoulder of mutton at Wilkinson's, to be roasted as well as it could be done, and sent a bottle of wine home to my house. In the meantime she and I and Joyce went walking all over Whitehall, whither General Monk was newly come, and we saw all his forces march by, in very good plight, and stout officers. Thence to my house, where we dined, but with a great deal of patience, for the mutton came in raw, and so we were fain to stay the stewing of it. In the meantime we sat studying a posy, for a ring for her, which she is to have at Roger Pepys's his wedding. After dinner I left them and went to hear news, but only found that the Parliament House was most of them with Monk at Whitehall, and that in his passing through the town he had many calls to him for a free Parliament, but little other welcome. I saw in the palace yard how unwilling some of the old soldiers were yet to go out of town without their money, and swore if they had it not in 3 days, as they were promised, they would do them more mischief in the country than if they had stayed here, and that is very likely, the country being all discontented. The town and guards are already full of Monk's soldiers. I returned, and it growing dark, I and they went to take a turn in the park, where Theophila, who was sent for us to dinner, outran my wife and another poor woman, that laid a pot of ale with me that she would outrun her. After that I set them as far as Charing Cross, and there left them and my wife, and I went to see Mrs. Ann, who began very high about a flock bed I sent her, but I took her down. Here I played at cards till 9 o'clock. So home and to bed. 4th. In the morning at my lute an hour, and so to my office, where I stayed expecting to have Mr. Squibb come to me, but he did not. At noon, walking in the hall, I found Mr. Swan, and got him and Captain Stone together, and there advised about Mr. Downing's business. So to Will's, and sat there till 3 o'clock, and then to Mr. Swan's, where I found his wife in very genteel mourning for her father, and took him out by water to the counsellor at the Temple, Mr. Stevens, and from thence to Gray's Inn, thinking to speak with Southerton Ellis, but found him not. So we met with an acquaintance of his in the walks, and went and drank, where I ate some bread and butter, having ate nothing all day, while they were by chance discoursing of Marriott, the great eater, so that I was, I remember, ashamed to eat what I would have done. Here Swan shewed us a ballad to the tune of Mardyke, which was most incomparably wrote in a printed hand, which I borrowed of him, but the song proved but silly, and so I did not write it out. Thence we went, and leaving Swan at his master's, my Lord Widrington, I met with Spicer, Washington, and D. Vines in Lincoln's Inn Court, and they were buying of a hanging jack to roast birds on, of a fellow that was there selling of some. I was fain to slip from there, and went to Mrs. Crew's to her, and advised about a maid to come and be with Mrs. Jem, while her maid is sick, but she could spare none. Thence to Sir Harry Wright's, but my lady not being within, I spoke to Mrs. Carter about it, who will get one against Monday. So with a link boy to Scott's, where Mrs. Ann was in a heat, but I spoke not to her, but told Mrs. Jem what I had done, and after that went home and wrote letters into the country by the post, and then played a while on my lute, and so done, to supper and then to bed. All the news to day is that the Parliament this morning voted the House to be made up of 400 forthwith. This day my wife killed her turkeys that Mr. Shepley gave her, that came out of Zealand with my Lord, and could not get her maid Jane by no means at any time to kill anything. 5th, Lord's Day. In the morning before church time, Mr. Hawley, who had for this day or two looked something sadly, which methinks did speak something in his breast concerning me, came to me telling me that he was out £24, which he could not tell what was become of, and that he do remember that he had such a sum in a bag the other day, and could not tell what he did with it, at which I was very sorry, but could not help him. In the morning to Mr. Gunning, where a stranger, an old man, preached a good honest sermon, upon what manner of love is this that we should be called the sons of God. After sermon I could not find my wife, who promised to be at the gate against my coming out, and waited there a great while, then went to my house, and finding her gone, I returned and called at the Chequers, thinking to dine at the ordinary with Mr. Chetwynd and Mr. Thomas, but they not being there, I went to my father, and found her there, and there I dined. To their church in the afternoon, and in Mrs. Turner's pew my wife took up a good black hood, and kept it. A stranger preached a poor sermon, and so read over the whole book of the story of Tobit. After sermon, home with Mrs. Turner, stayed with her a little while, then she went into the court to a christening, and we to my father's, where I wrote some notes for my brother John, to give to the mercers to-morrow, it being the day of their apposition. After supper, home, and before going to bed I stayed writing of this day its passages, while a drum came by, beating of a strange manner of beat, now and then a single stroke, which my wife and I wondered at, what the meaning of it should be. This afternoon at church I saw Dick Cumberland, newly come out of the country from his living, but did not speak to him. 6th. Before I went to my office, I went to Mr. Crew's, and paid Mr. Andrews the same £60 that he had received of Mr. Calthrop the last week. So back to Westminster, and walked with him thither, where we found the soldiers all set in the palace yard, to make way for General Monk to come to the house. At the hall we parted, a meeting Swan, he and I to the Swan, and drank our morning draught. So back again to the hall, where I stood upon the steps, and saw Monk go by, he making observance to the judges as he went along. At noon my father dined with me upon my turkey, that was brought from Denmark, and after dinner he and I to the Bull Head Tavern, where we drank half a pint of wine, and so parted. I to Mrs. Ann, and Mrs. Jem being gone out of the chamber, she and I had a very high bout. I rattled her up, she being in her bed, but she becoming more cool, we parted pretty good friends. Thence I went to Will's, where I stayed at cards till 10 o'clock, losing half a crown, and so home to bed. 7th. In the morning I went early to give Mr. Hawley notice of my being forced to go into London, but he having also business, we left our office business to Mr. Spicer, and he and I walked as far as the Temple, where I halted a little, and then went to Paul's school, but it being too soon, went and drank my morning draught with my cousin Tom Pepys the turner, and saw his house and shop, thence to school, where he that made the speech for the 7th form in praise of the founder did show a book which Mr. Crumlin had lately got, which is believed to be of the founder's own writing. After all the speeches, in which my brother John came off as well as any of the rest, I went straight home and dined, then to the hall, where in the palace I saw Monk's soldiers abuse Billing and all the Quakers that were at a meeting place there, and indeed the soldiers did use them very roughly, and were to blame. So after drinking with Mr. Spicer, who had received £600 for me this morning, I went to Captain Stone, and with him by coach to the Temple Gardens, all the way talking of the disease of the stone, where we met Mr. Squibb, but would do nothing till to-morrow morning. Thence back on foot home, where I found a letter from my Lord in character, which I construed, and after my wife had shewn me some ribbon and shoes that she had taken out of a box of Mr. Montague's, which formerly Mr. Kipps had left here when his master was at sea, I went to Mr. Crew, and advised with him about it being concerning my Lord's coming up to town, which he desires upon my advice the last week in my letter. Thence calling upon Mrs. Ann, I went home, and wrote in character to my Lord in answer to his letter. This day Mr. Crew told me that my Lord St. John is for a free Parliament, and that he is very great with Monk, who hath now the absolute command and power to do anything that he hath a mind to do. Mr. Moore told me of a picture hung up at the Exchange of a great pair of buttocks shooting of a turd into Lawson's mouth, and over it was wrote, "The thanks of the House." Boys do now cry, "Kiss my Parliament," instead of "Kiss my rump," so great and general a contempt is the rump come to, among all the good and bad. 8th. A little practice on my flageolet, and afterwards walking in my yard, to see my stock of pigeons, which begin now with the spring to breed very fast. I was called on by Mr. Fosson, my fellow pupil at Cambridge, and I took him to the Swan in the Palace Yard, and drank together our morning draught. Thence to my office, where I received money, and afterwards Mr. Carter, my old friend at Cambridge, meeting me as I was going out of my office, I took him to the Swan, and in the way I met with Captain Lidcott, and so we three went together and drank there, the Captain talking as high as ever he did, and more because of the fall of his brother Thurlow. Hence I went to Captain Stone, who told me how Squib had been with him, and that he could do nothing with him. So I returned to Mr. Carter, and with him to Will's, where I spent upon him and Monsieur L'Impertinent, alias Mr. Butler, who I took thither with me, and thence to a Rhenish wine-house, and in our way met with Mr. Hoole, where I paid for my cousin Roger Pepys his wine, and after drinking we parted. So I home, in my way delivering a letter which among the rest I had from my Lord to-day, to Sir N. Wheeler. At home my wife's brother brought her a pretty black dog, which I liked very well, and went away again. Hence, sending a porter with a hamper of bottles to the Temple, I called in my way upon Mrs. Jem, who was much frighted till I came to tell her that her mother was well. So to the Temple, where I delivered the wine, and received the money of my cousin Roger that I laid out, and thence to my father's, where he shewed me a base angry letter that he had newly received from my uncle Robert about my brother John, at which my father was very sad, but I comforted him, and wrote an answer. My brother John has an exhibition granted him from the school. My father and I went down to his kitchen, and there we eat and drank, and about 9 o'clock I went away homewards, and in Fleet Street received a great jostle from a man that had a mind to take the wall, which I could not help. I came home and to bed. Went to bed with my head not well by my too much drinking to-day, and I had a boil under my chin, which troubled me cruelly. 9th. Soon as out of my bed, I wrote letters into the country to go by carrier to-day. Before I was out of my bed, I heard the soldiers very busy in the morning, getting their horses ready, where they lay at Hilton's, but I knew not then their meaning in so doing. After I had wrote my letters, I went to Westminster up and down the hall, and with Mr. Swan walked a good deal talking about Mr. Downing's business. I went with him to Mr. Phelps's house, where he had some business to solicit, where we met Mr. Rogers, my neighbour, who did solicit against him, and talked very high, saying that he would not for £1,000 appear in a business that Swan did, at which Swan was very angry, but I believe he might be guilty enough. In the hall I understand how Monk is this morning gone into London with his army, and met with Mr. Fage, who told me that he do believe that Monk is gone to secure some of the Common Council of the City, who were very high yesterday there, and did vote that they would not pay any taxes till the House was filled up. I went to my office, where I wrote to my Lord after I had been at the upper bench, where Sir Robert Pye this morning came to desire his discharge from the Tower, but it could not be granted. After that I went to Mrs. Jem, who I had promised to go along with to her Aunt Wright's, but she was gone, so I went thither, and after drinking a glass of sack, I went back to Westminster Hall, and meeting with Mr. Pierce the surgeon, who would needs take me home, where Mr. Lucy, Burrell, and others dined, and after dinner I went home, and to Westminster Hall, where meeting Swan, I went with him by water to the Temple to our council, and did give him a fee to make a motion to-morrow in the Exchequer for Mr. Downing. Thence to Westminster Hall, where I heard an action very finely pleaded between my Lord Dorset and some other noble persons, his lady and other ladies of quality being here, and it was about £330 per annum that was to be paid to a poor spittle, which was given by some of his predecessors, and given on his side. Thence Swan and I to a drinking-house near Temple Bar, where while he wrote I played on my flageolet, till a dish of poached eggs was got ready for us, which we eat, and so by coach home. I called at Mr. Harper's, who told me how Monk had this day clapped up many of the Common Council, and that the Parliament had voted that he should pull down their gates and portcullises, their posts and their chains, which he do intend to do, and do lie in the city all night. I went home and got some alum to my mouth, where I have the beginnings of a cancer, and had also a plaster to my boil underneath my chin. 10th. In the morning I went to Mr. Swan, who took me to the Court of Wards, where I saw the 3 Lords Commissioners sitting upon some cause where Mr. Scobel was concerned, and my Lord Fountain took him up very roughly about some things that he said. After that we went to the Exchequer, where the barons were hearing of causes, and there I made affidavit that Mr. Downing was gone into Holland by order of the Council of State, and this affidavit I gave to Mr. Stevens our lawyer. Thence to my office, where I got money of Mr. Hawley to pay the lawyer, and there found Mr. Leonard, one of the clerks of the council, and took him to the Swan and gave him his morning draught. Then home to dinner, and after that to the Exchequer, where I heard all the afternoon a great many causes before the barons. In the end came ours, and Scrib proved clearly by his patent that the house and office did now belong to him. Our lawyer made some kind of opposition, but to no purpose, and so the cause was found against us, and the foreman of the jury brought in £10 damages, which the whole court cried shame of, and so he cried 12d. Thence I went home, vexed about this business, and there I found Mr. Moore, and with him went into London, to Mr. Fage, about the cancer in my mouth, which begins to grow dangerous, who gave me something for it, and also told me what Monk had done in the city, how he had pulled down the most part of the gates and chains that they could break down, and that he was now gone back to Whitehall. The city looked mighty blank, and cannot tell what in the world to do, the Parliament having this day ordered that the Common Council sit no more, but that new ones be chosen according to what qualifications they shall give them. Thence I went and drank with Mr. Moore at the Sugar Loaf by Temple Bar, where Swan and I were last night, and so we parted. At home I found Mr. Hunt, who sat talking with me a while, and so to bed. 11th. This morning I lay long abed, and then to my office, where I read all the morning my Spanish book of Rome. At noon I walked in the hall, where I heard the news of a letter from Monk, who was now gone into the city again, and did resolve to stand for the sudden filling up of the house. And it was very strange how the countenance of men in the hall was all changed with joy in half an hour's time. So I went up to the lobby, where I saw the speaker reading of the letter, and after it was read, Sir A. Hazelrigg came out very angry, and Billing, standing at the door, took him by the arm, and cried, "Thou man, will thy beast carry thee no longer? Thou must fall." The House presently after rose, and appointed to meet again at 3 o'clock. I went then down into the hall, where I met with Mr. Chetwynd, who had not dined no more than myself, and so we went toward London, in our way calling at 2 or 3 shops, but could have no dinner. At last, within Temple Bar, we found a pullet ready roasted, and there we dined. After that he went to his office in Chancery Lane, calling at the Rolls, where I saw the lawyers pleading. Then to his office, where I sat in his study singing, while he was with his man, Mr. Powell's son, looking after his business. Thence we took coach for the city to Guildhall, where the hall was full of people expecting Monk and Lord Mayor to come thither, and all very joyful. Here we stayed a great while, and at last meeting with a friend of his, we went to the 3 Tun Tavern, and drank half a pint of wine, and not liking the wine, we went to an alehouse, where we met with company of this third man's acquaintance, and there we drank a little. Hence I went alone to Guildhall to see whether Monk was come again or no, and met with him coming out of the chamber, where he had been with the mayor and aldermen, but such a shout I never heard in all my life, crying out, "God bless your excellence!" Here I met with Mr. Locke, and took him to an alehouse, and left him there to fetch Chetwynd. When we were come together, Locke told us the substance of the letter that went from Monk to the Parliament, wherein, after complaints that he and his officers were put upon such officers against the city, as they could not do with any content or honour, that there are many members now in the House that were of the late tyrannical Committee of Safety, that Lambert and Vane are now in town, contrary to the vote of Parliament, that there were many in the House that do press for new oaths to be put upon men, whereas we have more cause to be sorry for the many oaths that we have already taken and broken, that the late petition of the fanatic people presented by Barebone, for the imposing of an oath upon all sorts of people, was received by the House with thanks, that therefore he do desire that all writs for filling up of the House be issued by Friday next, and that, in the meantime, he would retire into the city, and only leave them guards for the security of the House and Council. The occasion of this was the order that he had last night to go into the city and disarm them, and take away their charter, whereby he and his officers say that the House had a mind to put them upon things that should make them odious, and so it would be in their power to do what they would with them. He told us that they had sent Scott and Robinson to him this afternoon, but he would not hear them, and that the mayor and aldermen had offered him their own houses for himself and his officers, and that his soldiers would lack for nothing. And indeed I saw many people give the soldiers drink and money, and all along in the streets cried, God bless them, and extraordinary good words. Hence we went to a merchant's house hard by, where Locke wrote a note and left, where I saw Sir Nicholas Crisp, and so we went to the Star Tavern, Monk being then at Benson's, where we dined, and I wrote a letter to my lord from thence. In Cheapside there was a great many bonfires, and bow bells, and all the bells in all the churches as we went home were a ringing. Hence we went homewards, it being about 10 o'clock. But the common joy that was everywhere to be seen! The number of bonfires, there being 14 between St. Dunstan's and Temple Bar, and at Strand Bridge I could at one view tell 31 fires. In King Street 7 or 8, and all along burning and roasting and drinking for rumps, there being rumps tied upon sticks and carried up and down. The butchers at the Maypole in the Strand rang a peal with their knives, when they were going to sacrifice their rump. On Ludgate Hill there was one turning of the spit that had a rump tied upon it, and another basting of it. Indeed it was past imagination, both the greatness and the suddenness of it. At one end of the street you would think there was a whole lane of fire, and so hot that we were fain to keep still on the further side merely for heat. We came to the Chequers at Charing Cross, where Chetwynd wrote a letter, and I gave him an account of what I had wrote for him to write. Thence home and sent my letters to the post-house in London, and my wife and I, after Mr. Hunt was gone, whom I found waiting at my house, went out again to show her the fires, and after walking as far as the Exchange, we returned and to bed. 12th. In the morning, it being Lord's Day, Mr. Pierce came to me to inquire how things go. We drank our morning draught together, and thence to Whitehall, where Dr. Hones preached, but I stayed not to hear. But walking in the court I heard that Sir Arthur Hazelrigg was newly gone into the city to Monk, and that Monk's wife removed from Whitehall last night. Home again, where at noon came according to my invitation my cousin Thomas Pepys and his partner, and dined with me. But before dinner we went and took a walk round the park, it being a most pleasant day as ever I saw. After dinner we three went into London together, where I heard that Monk had been at Paul's in the morning, and the people had shouted much at his coming out of the church. In the afternoon he was at a church in Broad Street, whereabout he do lodge. But not knowing how to see him, we went and walked half an hour in Moorfields, which were full of people, it being so fine a day. Here I took leave of them, and so to Paul's, where I met with Mr. Curtin's apprentice, the crooked fellow, and walked up and down with him 2 hours, sometimes in the street, looking for a tavern to drink in, but not finding any open, we durst not knock. Other times in the churchyard, where one told me that he had seen the letter printed. Thence to Mr. Turner's, where I found my wife, Mr. Edward Pepys, and Roger and Mr. Armiger being there, to whom I gave as good an account of things as I could. And so to my father's, where Charles Glasscock was overjoyed to see how things are now, who told me the boys had last night broke Barebone's windows. Hence home, and being near home we missed our maid, and were at a great loss, and went back a great way to find her. But when we could not see her, we went homewards, and found her there, got before us, which we wondered at greatly. So to bed, where my wife and I had some high words upon my telling her that I would fling the dog which her brother gave her out of window, if he dirtied the house any more. 13th. To my office till noon, thence home to dinner, my mouth being very bad of the cancer, and my left leg beginning to be sore again. After dinner to see Mrs. Jem, and in the way met with Caton on foot in the street, and talked with her a little. So home and took my wife to my father's. In my way I went to Playford's, and for 2 books that I had, and 6s. 6d. to boot, I had my great book of songs, which he sells always for 4s. At my father's I stayed a while my mother sent her maid Bess to Cheapside for some herbs to make a water for my mouth. Then I went to see Mr. Cumberland, and after a little stay with him I returned, and took my wife home, where after supper to bed. This day Monk was invited to Whitehall to dinner by my lords. Not seeming willing, he would not come. I went to Mr. Fage from my father's, who had been this afternoon with Monk, who do promise to live and die with the city, and for the honour of the city. And indeed the city is very open-handed to the soldiers, that they are most of them drunk all day, and have money given them. He did give me something for my mouth, which I did use this night. 14th. Called out in the morning by Mr. Moore, whose voice my wife hearing in my dressing-chamber with me, got herself ready, and came down and challenged him for her Valentine, this being the day. To Westminster Hall, there being many new remonstrances and declarations from many counties to Monk and the city, and one coming from the north from Sir Thomas Fairfax. Hence I took him to the Swan, and gave him his morning draught. So to my office, where Mr. Hill of Worcestershire came to see me and my partner in our office, with whom we went to Will's to drink. At noon I went home, and so to Mr. Crewe's, but they had dined, and so I went to see Mrs. Jem, where I stayed a while, and home again, where I stayed an hour or two at my lute, and so forth to Westminster Hall, where I heard that the Parliament hath now changed the oath so much talked of to a promise, and that among other qualifications for the members that are to be chosen, one is, that no man, nor the son of any man that hath been in arms during the life of the father, shall be capable of being chosen to sit in Parliament. To Will's, where like a fool I stayed and lost sixpence at cards. So home, and wrote a letter to my Lord by the post. So after supper to bed. This day, by an order of the House, Sir H. Vane was sent out of town to his house in Lincolnshire. 15th. Called up in the morning by Captain Holland and Captain Cuttance, and with them to Harper's, thence to my office, thence with Mr. Hill of Worcestershire to Will's, where I gave him a letter to Nan Pepys, and some merry pamphlets against the Rump, to carry to her into the country. So to Mr. Crewe's, where the dining-room being full, Mr. Walgrave and I dined below in the buttery, by ourselves, upon a good dish of buttered salmon. Thence to Herring the merchant about my Lord's Worcester money, and back to Paul's Churchyard, where I stayed reading in Fuller's History of the Church of England an hour or two, and so to my father's, where Mr. Hill came to me, and I gave him direction what to do at Worcester about the money. Thence to my Lady Wright's, and gave her a letter from my Lord Privily. So to Mrs. Jem, and sat with her, who dined at Mr. Crewe's to-day, and told me that there was at her coming away at least 40 gentlemen, I suppose members that were secluded, for Mr. Walgrave told me that there were about 30 met there the last night, came dropping in one after another thither. Thence home, and wrote into the country against to-morrow by the carrier, and so to bed. At my father's I heard how my cousin Kate Joyce had a fall yesterday from her horse, and had some hurt thereby. No news to-day, but all quiet to see what the Parliament will do about the issuing of the writs to-morrow for filling up of the House, according to Monk's desire. 16th. In the morning at my lute. Then came Shaw and Hawley, and I gave them their morning draught at my house. So to my office, where I wrote by the carrier to my Lord, and sealed my letter at Will's, and gave it Old East to carry it to the carrier's, and to take up a box of China oranges, and 2 little barrels of scallops at my house, which Captain Cuttance sent to me for my Lord. Here I met with Osborne, and with Shaw and Spicer, and we went to the Sun Tavern in expectation of a dinner, where we had sent us only 2 trenchers full of meat, at which we were very merry, while in came Mr. Wade and his friend Captain Moyes, who told us of his hopes to get an estate merely for his namesake. And here we stayed till 7 at night, I winning a quart of sack of Shaw, that 1 trencherful that was sent us was all lamb, and he that it was veal. I, by having but 3d. in my pocket, made shift to spend no more, whereas if I had had more, I had spent more as the rest did, so that I see it is an advantage to a man to carry little in his pocket. Home, and after supper, and a little at my flute, I went to bed. 17th. In the morning, Tom that was my Lord's footboy came to see me, and had 10 shillings of me of the money which I have to keep of his, so that now I have but 35 shillings more of his. Then came Mr. Hills the instrument maker, and I consulted with him about the altering my lute and my viol. After that I went into my study and did up my accounts, and found that I am about £40 beforehand in the world, and that is all. So to my office, and from thence brought Mr. Hawley home with me to dinner, and after dinner wrote a letter to Mr. Downing about his business, and gave it Hawley, and so went to Mr. Gunning's to his weekly fast, and after sermon, meeting there with Monsieur l'Impertinent, we went and walked in the park till it was dark. I played on my pipe at the Echo, and then drank a cup of ale at Jacob's. So to Westminster Hall, and he with me, where I heard that some of the members of the House were gone to meet with some of the secluded members and General Monk in the City. Hence we went to Whitehall, thinking to hear more news, where I met with Mr. Hunt, who told me how Monk had sent for all his goods that he had here into the City, and yet again he told me that some of the members of the House had this day laid in firing into their lodgings at Whitehall for a good while. So that we are at a great stand to think what will become of things, whether Monk will stand to the Parliament or no. Hence Monsieur l'Impertinent and I to Harper's, and there drank a cup or 2 to the King, and to his fair sister Frances, good health, of whom we had much discourse, of her not being much the worse for the smallpox, which she had this last summer. So home and to bed. This day we are invited to my uncle Fenner's wedding feast, but went not, this being the 27th year. 18th. A great while at my viol and voice, learning to sing Fly boy, without book. So to my office, where little to do. In the hall I met with Mr. Eglin and one Looker, a famous gardener, servant to my Lord Salisbury, and among other things the gardener told a strange passage in good earnest. Home to dinner, and then went to my Lord's lodgings, to my turret there, and took away most of my books, and sent them home by my maid. Thither came Captain Holland to me, who took me to the Half Moon Tavern, and Mr. Southern, Blackburn's clerk. Thence he took me to the Mitre in Fleet Street, where we heard, in a room over the music-room, very plainly through the ceiling. Here we parted, and I to Mr. Wotton's, and with him to an alehouse, and drank, while he told me a great many stories of comedies that he had formerly seen acted, and the names of the principal actors, and gave me a very good account of it. Thence to Whitehall, where I met with Llewellyn, and in the clerk's chamber wrote a letter to my Lord. So home and to bed. This day 2 soldiers were hanged in the Strand, for their late mutiny at Somerset House. 19th, Lord's Day. Early in the morning I set my books that I brought home yesterday up in order in my study. Thenceforth to Mr. Harp's to drink a draught of Pearl, whither by appointment Monsieur l'Impertinent, who did intend too upon my desire to go along with me to St. Bartholomew's, to hear one Mr. Sparks, but it raining very hard we went to Mr. Gunning's, and heard an excellent sermon, and speaking of the character that the Scripture gives of Anne, the mother of the Blessed Virgin, he did there speak largely in commendation of widowhood, and not as we do to marry 2 or 3 wives or husbands, one after another. Here I met with Mr. Moore, and went home with him to dinner, where he told me the discourse that happened between the secluded members and the members of the House, before Monk last Friday. How the secluded said, that they did not intend by coming in to express revenge upon these men, but only to meet and dissolve themselves, and only to issue writs for a free Parliament. He told me how Hazelrigg was afraid to have the candle carried before him, for fear that the people seeing him would do him hurt, and that he is afraid to appear in the city. That there is great likelihood that the secluded members will come in, and so Mr. Crewe and my Lord are likely to be great men, at which I was very glad. After dinner there was many secluded members come in to Mr. Crewe, which, it being the Lord's day, did make Mr. Moore believe that there was something extraordinary in the business. Hence home, and brought my wife to Mr. Mossum's to hear him, and indeed he made a very good sermon, but only too eloquent for a pulpit. Here Mr. l'Impertinent helped me to a seat. After sermon to my father's, and fell in discourse concerning our going to Cambridge the next week with my brother John. To Mrs. Turner, where her brother, Mr. Edward Pepys, was there, and I sat a great while talking of public business of the times with him. So to supper to my father's, all supper talking of John's going to Cambridge. So home, and it raining my wife got my mother's French mantle and my brother John's hat, and so we went all along home and to bed. 20th. In the morning at my lute, then to my office, where my partner and I made even our balance. Took him home to dinner with me, where my brother John came to dine with me. After dinner I took him to my study at home and at my Lord's, and gave him some books and other things against his going to Cambridge. After he was gone I went forth to Westminster Hall, where I met with Chetwynd, Simons, and Gregory, and with them to Marsh's at Whitehall to drink, and stayed there a pretty while reading a pamphlet well writ and directed to General Monk, in praise of the form of monarchy which was settled here before the wars. They told me how the Speaker learnt all to refuse to sign the writs for choice of new members in the place of the excluded, and by that means the writs could not go out to-day. In the evening Simons and I to the Coffee Club, where nothing to do, only I heard Mr. Harrington, and my Lord of Dorset, and another lord, talking of getting another place as the cockpit, and they did believe it would come to something. After a small debate upon the question whether learned or unlearned subjects are the best, the club broke up very poorly, and I do not think they will meet any more. Hence with Vines, etc., to Will's, and after a pot or two home, and so to bed. 21st. In the morning, going out, I saw many soldiers going towards Westminster, and was told that they were going to admit the secluded members again. So I to Westminster Hall, and in Chancery Row I saw about 20 of them who had been at Whitehall with General Monk, who came thither this morning, and made a speech to them, and recommended to them a Commonwealth, and against Charles Stuart. They came to the House, and went in one after another, and at last the Speaker came. But it is very strange that this could be carried so private, that the other members of the House heard nothing of all this, till they found them in the House, insomuch that the soldiers that stood there to let in the secluded members, they took for such as they had ordered to stand there to hinder their coming in. Mr. Prynne came with an old basket-hilt sword on, and had a great many great shouts upon his going into the hall. They sat till noon, and at their coming out Mr. Crewe saw me, and bid me come to his house, which I did, and he would have me dine with him, which I did, and he very joyful told me that the House had made General Monk General of all the forces in England, Scotland, and Ireland, and that upon Monk's desire, for the service that Lawson had lately done in pulling down the Committee of Safety, he had the command of the sea for the time being. He advised me to send for my lord forthwith, and told me that there is no question that, if he will, he may now be employed again, and that the House do intend to do nothing more than to issue writs, and to settle a foundation for a free Parliament. After dinner I back to Westminster Hall with him in his coach. Here I met with Mr. Locke and Purcell, Masters of Music, and with them to the coffee house, into a room next the water, by ourselves, where we spent an hour or two till Captain Taylor came to us, who told us that the House had voted the gates of the city to be made up again, and the members of the city that are in prison to be set at liberty, and that Sir G. Booth's case be brought into the House tomorrow. Here we had variety of brave Italian and Spanish songs, and a canon for 8 voices, which Mr. Locke had lately made on these words, Domine salvum fac regem, an admirable thing. Here also Captain Taylor began a discourse of something that he had lately writ about Gavelkind, in answer to one that had wrote a piece upon the same subject, and indeed discovered a great deal of study in antiquity in his discourse. Here out of the window it was a most pleasant sight to see the city from one end to the other, with a glory about it, so high was the light of the bonfires, and so thick round the city, and the bells rang everywhere. Hence home and wrote to my lord, afterwards came down and found Mr. Hunt, troubled at this change, and Mr. Spong, who stayed late with me, singing of a song or two, and so parted. My wife not very well, went to bed before. This morning I met in the hall with Mr. Fuller, of Christ, and told him of my design to go to Cambridge, and whither. He told me very freely the temper of Mr. Widdrington, how he did oppose all the fellows in the college, and that there was a great distance between him and the rest, at which I was very sorry, for that he told me he feared it would be little to my brother's advantage to be his pupil. 22nd. In the morning intended to have gone to Mr. Crew's to borrow some money, but it raining I forbore, and went to my lord's lodging, and looked that all things were well there. Then home and sang a song to my viol, so to my office and to Will's, where Mr. Pierce found me out, and told me that he would go with me to Cambridge, where Colonel Eyre's regiment, to which he was surgeon, lieth. Walking in the hall I saw Major General Brown, who had a long time been banished by the Rump, but now with his beard overgrown he comes abroad and sat in the house. To my father's to dinner, where nothing but a small dish of powdered beef, and dish of carrots, they being all busy to get things ready for my brother John to go tomorrow. After dinner, my wife staying there, I went to Mr. Crew's and got £5 of Mr. Andrews, and so to Mrs. Jemima, who now hath her instrument about her neck, and indeed is infinitely altered, and holds her head upright. I paid her maid 40 shillings of the money that I have received of Mr. Andrews. Hence home to my study, where I only wrote thus much of this day's passage to this, and so out again. To Whitehall, where I met with Will Simons and Mr. Mabbott at Marsh's, who told me how the House had this day voted that the gates of the city should be set up at the cost of the state, and that Major General Brown's being proclaimed a traitor be made void, and several other things of that nature. Home for my lantern, and so to my father's, where I directed John what books to be put for Cambridge. After that to supper, where my uncle Fenner and my aunt, Theophila Turner, and Joyce, at a brave leg of veal roasted, and were very merry against John's going to Cambridge. I observed this day how abominably Barebone's windows are broke again last night. At past 9 o'clock my wife and I went home. 23rd, Thursday. My birthday, now 27 years. A pretty fair morning. I rose, and after writing a while in my study, I went forth to my office, where I told Mr. Hawley of my thoughts to go out of town tomorrow. Hither Mr. Fuller comes to me, and my uncle Thomas too. Thence I took them to drink, and so put off my uncle. So with Mr. Fuller home to my house, where he dined with me, and he told my wife and me a great many stories of his adversities since these troubles, in being forced to travel in the Catholic countries, etc. He shewed me his bills, but I had not money to pay him. We parted, and I to Whitehall, where I was to see my horse, which Mr. Garthwaite lends me tomorrow. So home, where Mr. Pierce comes to me about appointing time and place where and when to meet tomorrow. So to Westminster Hall, where, after the House rose, I met with Mr. Crew, who told me that my lord was chosen by 73 voices to be one of the Council of State. Mr. Pierpoint had the most, 101, and himself the next 2. He brought me in the coach home, here Mr. Onslow being in it. I back to the hall, and at Mrs. Mitchell's shop stayed talking a great while with her and my chaplain, Mr. Mumford, and drank a pot or 2 of ale on a wager that Mr. Prynne is not of the Council. Home and wrote to my lord the news of the choice of the Council by the post, and so to bed. 24th. I rose very early, and taking horse at Scotland Yard, at Mr. Garthwaite's stable, I rode to Mr. Pierce's, who rose, and in a quarter of an hour, leaving his wife in bed, with whom Mr. Lucy methought was very free as she lay in bed, we both mounted, and so set forth about 7 of the clock, the day and the way very foul. About Ware we overtook Mr. Blayton, brother-in-law to Dick Vines, who went thenceforwards with us, and at Puckridge we baited, where we had a loin of mutton fried, and were very merry. But the way exceeding bad from Ware thither. Then up again, and as far as Fulmer, within 6 miles of Cambridge, my mare being almost tired. Here we lay at the Chequer, playing at cards till supper, which was a breast of veal roasted. I lay with Mr. Pierce, who we left here the next morning, upon his going to Hinchingbroke, to speak with my Lord before his going to London, and we two come to Cambridge by 8 o'clock in the morning. 25th. To the Falcon in the Petty Cury, where we found my father and brother very well. After dressing myself, about 10 o'clock, my father, brother, and I to Mr. Widdrington at Christ College, who received us very civilly, and caused my brother to be admitted, while my father, he and I sat talking. After that done, we take leave. My father and brother went to visit some friends, Pepys, scholars in Cambridge, while I went to Magdalen College to Mr. Hill, with whom I found Mr. Zanchy, Burton, and Hollins, and was exceeding civilly received by them. I took leave on promise to sup with them, and to my inn again, where I dined with some others that were there at an ordinary. After dinner my brother to the college, and my father and I to my cousin Angier's to see them, where Mr. Fairbrother came to us. Here we sat a while talking. My father he went to look after his things at the carrier's, and my brother's chamber, while Mr. Fairbrother, my cousin Angier, and Mr. Zanchy, whom I met at Mr. Merton's shop, where I bought Elenchus motum, having given my former to Mr. Downing when he was here, to the 3 Tuns, where we drank pretty hard, and many healths to the King, etc., till it began to be darkish. Then we broke up, and I and Mr. Zanchy went to Magdalen College, where a very handsome supper at Mr. Hill's chambers, I suppose upon a club among them, where in their discourse I could find that there was nothing at all left of the old preciseness in their discourse, especially on Saturday nights. And Mr. Zanchy told me that there was no such thing nowadays among them at any time. After supper and some discourse then, to my inn, where I found my father in his chamber, and after some discourse, and he well satisfied with this day's work, we went to bed, my brother lying with me, his things not being come by the carrier that he could not lie in the college. 26th. Sunday. My brother went to the college to chapel. My father and I went out in the morning, and walked out in the fields behind King's College, and in King's College chapel yard, where we met with Mr. Fairbrother, who took us to Botolph's church, where we heard Mr. Nicholas of Queen's College, who I knew in my time to be Tripos, with great applause, upon this text, for thy commandments are broad. Thence my father and I to Mr. Widdrington's chamber to dinner, where he used us very courteously again, and had 2 fellow commoners at table with him, and Mr. Pepper, a fellow of the college. After dinner, while we sat talking by the fire, Mr. Pierce's man came to tell me that his master was come to town. So my father and I took leave, and found Mr. Pierce at our inn, who told us that he had lost his journey, for my lord was gone from Hinchingbroke to London on Thursday last, at which I was a little put to a stand. So after a cup of drink I went to Magdalen College, to get the certificate of the college for my brother's entrance there, that he might save his ear. I met with Mr. Burton in the court, who took me to Mr. Petrel's chamber, where he was, and Mr. Zanchy. By and by Mr. Petrel and Zanchy and I went out, Petrel to church, Zanchy and I to the Rose Tavern, where we sat and drank till sermon done, and then Mr. Petrel came to us, and we 3 sat drinking the King's and his whole family's health till it began to be dark. Then we parted. Zanchy and I went to my lodging, where we found my father and Mr. Pierce at the door, and I took them both and Mr. Blayton to the Rose Tavern, and there gave them a quart or 2 of wine, not telling them that we had been there before. After this we broke up, and my father, Mr. Zanchy, and I to my cousin Angier to supper, where I caused 2 bottles of wine to be carried from the Rose Tavern, that was drunk up, and I had not the wit to let them know at table that it was I that paid for them, and so I lost my thanks for them. After supper Mr. Fairbrother, who supped there with us, took me into a room by himself, and shewed me a pitiful copy of verses upon Mr. Prynne, which he esteemed very good, and desired that I would get them given to Mr. Prynne, in hopes that he would get him some place for it, which I said I would do, but did laugh in my sleeve to think of his folly, though indeed a man that has always expressed great civility to me. After that we sat down and talked. I took leave of all my friends, and so to my inn, where after I had wrote a note and enclosed the certificate to Mr. Widdrington, I bade good night to my father, and John went to bed. But I stayed up a little while, playing the fool with the lass of the house at the door of the chamber, and so to bed. 27th. Up by 4 o'clock, and after I was ready, took my leave of my father, whom I left in bed, and the same of my brother John, to whom I gave 10s. Mr. Blayton and I took horse, and straight to Saffron Walden, where at the White Hart we set up our horses, and took the master of the house to shew us Audley End House, who took us on foot through the park, and so to the house, where the housekeeper shewed us all the house, in which the stateliness of the ceilings, chimney-pieces, and form of the whole, was exceedingly worth seeing. He took us into the cellar, where we drank most admirable drink, a health to the King. Here I played on my flageolet, there being an excellent echo. He shewed us excellent pictures, two especially, those of the 4 Evangelists and Henry VIII. After that I gave the man 2s. For his trouble, and went back again. In our going my landlord carried us through a very old hospital or almshouse, where 40 poor people was maintained, a very old foundation, and over the chimney in the mantelpiece was an inscription in brass, Orate pre anima Tomai bird, etc. And the poor box also was on the same chimney-piece, with an iron door and locks to it, into which I put 6d. They brought me a draught of their drink in a brown bowl tipped with silver, which I drank off, and at the bottom was a picture of the Virgin and the Child in her arms, done in silver. So we went to our inn, and after eating of something, and kissed the daughter of the house, she being very pretty, we took leave, and so that night, the road pretty good, but the weather rainy, to Epping, where we sat and played a game at cards, and after supper, and some merry talk with a plain bold maid of the house, we went to bed. 28th. Up in the morning, and had some red herrings to our breakfast, while my boot heel was a-mending. By the same token the boy left the hole as big as it was before. Then to horse, and for London through the forest, where we found the way good, but only in one path, which we kept as if we had rode through a canal all the way. We found the shops all shut, and the militia of the Red Regiment in arms at the Old Exchange, among whom I found and spoke to Nick Osborne, who told me that it was a Thanksgiving Day through the city for the return of the Parliament. At Paul's I light, Mr. Blayton holding my horse, where I found Dr. Reynolds in the pulpit, and General Monk there, who was to have a great entertainment at Grocers' Hall. So home, where my wife and all well. Shifted myself, and so to Mr. Crew's, and then to Sir Harry Wright's, where I found my lord at dinner, who called for me in, and was glad to see me. There was at dinner also Mr. John Wright and his lady, a very pretty lady, Alderman Allen's daughter. I dined here with Will Howe, and after dinner went out with him to buy a hat, calling in my way, and saw my mother, which we did at the Plough in Fleet Street by my lord's direction, but not as for him. Here we met with Mr. Pierce a little before, and he took us to the Greyhound Tavern, and gave us a pint of wine, and as the rest of the seamen do, talked very high again of my lord. After we had done about the hat, we went homewards, he to Mr. Crew, and I to Mrs. Jem, and sat with her a little. Then home, where I found Mr. Shepley, almost drunk, come to see me. Afterwards Mr. Spong comes, with whom I went up and played with him a duo or two, and so good night. I was indeed a little vexed with Mr. Shepley, but said nothing about his breaking open of my study at my house, merely to give him the key of the stair door at my lord's, which lock he might better have broke than mine. 29th. To my office, and drank at Will's with Mr. Moore, who told me how my lord is chosen General at Sea by the Council, and that it is thought that Monk will be joined with him therein. Home and dined, after dinner my wife and I by water to London, and thence to Herring's, the merchant in Coleman Street, about £50 which he promises I shall have on Saturday next. So to my mother's, and then to Mrs. Turner's, of whom I took leave, and her company, because she was to go out of town to-morrow with Mr. Pepys into Norfolk. Here my cousin Norton gave me a brave cup of metheglin, the first I ever drank. To my mother's, and supped there. She shewed me a letter to my father from my uncle, inviting him to come to Brampton while he is in the country. So home and to bed. This day my lord came to the house, the first time since he came to town, but he had been at the council before. End of February.
March, 1659-1660. March 1st. In the morning went to my lord's lodgings, thinking to have spoke with Mr. Shepley, having not been to visit him since my coming to town. But he being not within, I went up, and out of the box where my lord's pamphlets lay, I chose as many as I had a mind to have for my own use, and left the rest. Then to my office, where little to do. But Mr. Shepley comes to me, so at dinner time he and I went to Mr. Crew's, whither Mr. Thomas was newly come to town, being sent with Sir H. Yelverton, my old schoolfellow at Paul's school, to bring the thanks of the county to General Monk for the return of the Parliament. But old Mr. Crew and my lord not coming home to dinner, we tarried late before we went to dinner, it being the day that John, Mr. John Crew's coachman, was to be buried in the afternoon, he being a day or two before killed with a blow of one of his horses
that struck his skull into his brain. From thence Mr. Shepley and I went into London to Mr. Laxton's, my Lord's apothecary, and so by water to Westminster, where at the Sun he and I spent 2 or 3 hours in a pint or 2 of wine, discoursing of matters in the country, among other things telling me that my uncle did to him make a very kind mention of me, and what he would do for me. Thence I went home, and went to bed betimes. This day the Parliament did vote that they would not sit longer than the 15th day of this month. 2nd. This morning I went early to my Lord at Mr. Crew's, where I spoke to him. Here were a great many come to see him, as Secretary Thurlow, who is now by this Parliament chosen again Secretary of State. There were also General Monk's trumpeters to give my Lord a sound of their trumpets this morning. Thence I went to my office, and wrote a letter to Mr. Downing about the business of his house. Then going home I met with Mr. Eglin, Chetwin, and Thomas, who took me to the Leg, in King Street, where we had 2 brave dishes of meat, one of fish, a carp, and some other fishes, as well done as ever I ate any. After that to the Swan Tavern, where we drank a quart or 2 of wine, and so parted. So I to Mrs. Jem, and took Mr. Moore with me, who I met in the street, and there I met W. Howe and Shepley. After that to Westminster Hall, where I saw Sir G. Booth at liberty. This day I hear the City militia is put into good posture, and it is thought that Monk will not be able to do any great matter against them now, if he have a mind. I understand that my Lord Lambert did yesterday send a letter to the Council, and that to-night he is to come and appear to the Council in person. Sir Arthur Hazelrigg do not yet appear in the House. Great is the talk of a single person, and that it would now be Charles, George, or Richard again, for the last of which my Lord St. John is said to speak high. Great also is the dispute now in the House, in whose name the writ shall run for the next Parliament, and it is said that Mr. Prynne in open House said, "In King Charles's." From Westminster Hall home, spent the evening in my study, and so, after some talk with my wife, then to bed. 3rd. To Westminster Hall, where I found that my Lord was last night voted one of the Generals at sea, and Monk the other. I met my Lord in the hall, who bid me come to him at noon. I met with Mr. Pierce the purser, Lieutenant Lambert, Mr. Creed, and Will Howe, and went with them to the Swan Tavern. Up to my office, but did nothing. At noon home to dinner, to a sheep's head. My brother Tom came and dined with me, and told me that my mother was not very well, and that my Aunt Fenner was very ill too. After dinner I to Warwick House in Holborn to my Lord, where he dined with my Lord of Manchester, Sir Dudley North, my Lord Fiennes, and my Lord Berkeley. I stayed in the great hall, talking with some gentlemen there, till they all come out. Then I, by coach with my Lord, to Mr. Crew's, in our way talking of public things, and how I should look after getting of his Commissioner's dispatch. He told me he feared there was new design hatching, as if Monk had a mind to get into the saddle. Here I left him and went by appointment to Herring, the merchant, but missed of my money, at which I was much troubled, but could not help myself. Returning, met Mr. Gifford, who took me and gave me half a pint of wine, and told me, as I hear this day from many, that things are in a very doubtful posture, some of the Parliament being willing to keep the power in their hands. After I had left him, I met with Tom Harper, who took me into a place in Drury Lane, where we drank a great deal of strong water, more than ever I did in my life at one time before. He talked huge high that my Lord Protector would come in place again, which indeed is much discoursed of again, though I do not see it possible. Hence home, and wrote to my father at Brampton by the post. So to bed. This day I was told that my Lord General Fleetwood told my Lord that he feared the King of Sweden is dead of a fever at Gothenburg. 4th, Lord's Day. Before I went to church, I sang Orpheus' hymn to my viol. After that to Mr. Gunning's, an excellent sermon upon charity. Then to my mother to dinner, where my wife and the maid were come. After dinner we 3 to Mr. Messum's, where we met Monsieur l'Impertinent, who got us a seat, and told me a ridiculous story, how that last week he had caused a simple citizen to spend £80 in entertainments of him and some friends of his, upon pretence of some service that he would do him in his suit after a widow. Then to my mother again, and after supper she and I talked very high about religion, I in defence of the religion I was born in. Then home. 5th, early in the morning, Mr. Hill comes to string my theorbo, which we were about till past 10 o'clock, with a great deal of pleasure. Then to Westminster, where I met with Mr. Shepley and Mr. Pinkney at Will's, who took me by water to Billingsgate at the Salutation Tavern, whither by and by Mr. Talbot and Adams came, and bring a great deal of good meat, a ham of bacon, etc. Here we stayed and drank till Mr. Adams began to be overcome. Then we parted, and so to Westminster by water, only seeing Mr. Pinkney at his own house, where he shewed me how he had always kept the lion and unicorn in the back of his chimney bright, in expectation of the King's coming again. At home I found Mr. Hunt, who told me how the Parliament had voted that the Covenant be printed and hung in churches again. Great hopes of the King's coming again. To bed. 6th, Shrove Tuesday. I called Mr. Shepley, and we both went up to my Lord's lodgings at Mr. Crew's, where he bade us to go home again, and get a fire against an hour after, which we did at Whitehall, whither he came, and after talking with him and me about his going to sea, he called me by myself to go along with him into the garden, where he asked me how things were with me, and what he had endeavoured to do with my uncle, to get him to do something for me, but he would say nothing too. He likewise bade me to look out now, at this turn, some good place, and he would use all his own and all the interest of his friends that he had in England to do me good, and asked me whether I could without too much inconvenience go to sea as his secretary, and bid me think of it. He also began to talk of things of state, and told me that he should want one in that capacity at sea, that he might trust in, and therefore he would have me to go. He told me also that he did believe the King would come in, and did discourse with me about it, and about the affection of the people and city, at which I was full glad. After he was gone, I waiting upon him through the garden till he came to the hall, where I left him and went up to my office, where Mr. Hawley brought one to me, a seaman, that had promised Rio to him if he get him a purser's place, which I think to endeavour to do. Here comes my uncle Tom, whom I took to Will's and drank with, poor man. He comes to inquire about the Knights of Windsor, of which he desires to get to be one. While we were drinking, in comes Mr. Day, a carpenter in Westminster, to tell me that it was Shrove Tuesday, and that I must go with him to their yearly club upon this day, which I confess I had quite forgot. So I went to the Bell, where were Mr. Eglin, Vesey, Vincent, a butcher, one more, and Mr. Tanner, with whom I played upon a viol, and he a violin, after dinner, and were very merry, with a special good dinner, a leg of veal and bacon, 2 capons and sausages and fritters, with abundance of wine. After that I went home, where I found Kate Sturpin, who hath not been here a great while before. She gone, I went to see Mrs. Jem, at whose chamber door I found a couple of ladies, but she not being there, we hunted her out, and found that she and another had hid themselves behind a door. Well, they all went down into the dining room, where it was full of tag, rag, and bobtail, dancing, singing, and drinking, of which I was ashamed, and after I had stayed a dance or two, I went away. Going home, called at my Lord's for Mr. Shepley, but found him at the Lion with the pewterer, that he had bought pewter to-day of. With them I drank, and so home, and wrote by the post, by my Lord's command, for J. Goods to come up presently. For my Lord intends to go forthwith into the Swiftsure, till the Naseby be ready. This day I hear that the Lords do intend to sit, and great store of them are now in town, and I see in the hall to-day. Overton at Hull do stand out, but can, it is thought, do nothing, and Lawson, it is said, is gone with some ships thither, but all that is nothing. My Lord told me that there was great endeavours to bring in the Protector again, but he told me, too, that he did believe it would not last long if he were brought in, no, nor the King neither, though he seems to think that he will come in, unless he carry himself very soberly and well. Everybody now drinks the King's health without any fear, whereas before it was very private that a man dare do it. Monk this day is feasted at Mercer's Hall, and is invited one after another to all the 12 halls in London. Many think that he is honest yet, and some or more think him to be a fool that would raise himself, but think that he will undo himself by endeavouring it. My mind, I must needs remember, has been very much eased and joyed at my Lord's great expressions of kindness this day, and in discourse thereupon my wife and I lay awake an hour or two in our bed. 7th, Ash Wednesday. In the morning I went to my Lord at Mr. Crew's. In my way Washington overtook me, and told me upon my question whether he knew of any place now void that I might have, by power over friends, that this day Mr. G. Montague was to be made Custos Rotulorum for Westminster, and that by friends I might get to be named by him Clerk of the Peace, with which I was, as I am at all new things, very much joyed. So when I came to Mr. Crew's, I spoke to my Lord about it, who told me he believed Mr. Montague had already promised it, and that it was given him only that he might gratify one person with the place I look for. Here, among many that were here, I met with Mr. Lynes, the surgeon, who promised me some seeds of the sensitive plant. I spoke too with Mr. Pierce, the surgeon, who gave me great encouragement to go to sea with my Lord. Thence going homewards, my Lord overtook me in his coach, and called me in, and so I went with him to St. James, and G. Montague being gone to Whitehall, we walked over the park thither, all the way he discoursing of the times, and of the change of things since the last year, and wondering how he could bear with so great disappointment as he did. He did give me the best advice that he could what was best for me, whether to stay or go with him, and offered all the ways that could be, how he might do me good, with the greatest liberty and love that could be. I left him at Whitehall, and myself went to Westminster to my office, whither nothing to do, but I did discourse with Mr. Falconbridge about L'esquire's place, and had his consent to get it if I could. I afterwards in the hall met with W. Simons, who put me in the best way how to get it done. Thence by appointment to the Angel in King Street, where Chetwynd, Mr. Thomas, and Doling were at oysters, and beginning Lent this day with a fish dinner. After dinner Mr. Thomas and I by water to London, where I went to Herring's and received the £50 of my Lord's upon Frank's bill from Worcester. I gave in the bill, and set my hand to his bill. Thence I went to the Pope's Head Alley, and called on Adam Chard, and bought a catcall there. It cost me 2 groats. Thence went and gave him a cup of ale. After that to the Sun behind the Exchange, where meeting my uncle White by the way, took him with me thither, and after drinking a health or 2 round at the Cock, Mr. Thomas being gone thither, we parted, he and I homewards, parted at Fleet Street, where I found my father newly come home from Brampton very well. He left my uncle with his leg very dangerous, and do believe he cannot continue in that condition long. He tells me that my uncle did acquaint him very largely what he did intend to do with his estate, to make me his heir, and give my brother Tom something, and that my father and mother should have likewise something, to raise portions for John and Paul. I pray God he may be as good as his word. Here I stayed and supped, and so home, there being Joyce Norton there, and Charles Glasscock. Going home I called at Wotton's, and took home a piece of cheese. At home Mr. Shepley sat with me a little while, and so we all to bed. This news and my Lord's great kindness makes me very cheerful within. I pray God make me thankful. This day, according to order, Sir Arthur appeared at the House. What was done I know not, but there was all the rumpers, almost, come to the House to-day. My Lord did seem to wonder much why Lambert was so willing to be put into the Tower, and thinks he has some design in it. But I think that he is so poor that he cannot use his liberty for debts, if he were at liberty, and so it is as good and better for him to be there than anywhere else. 8th. To Whitehall to bespeak some firing for my father at Short's, and likewise to speak to Mr. Blackburn about Batters being gunner in the Wexford. Then to Westminster Hall, where there was a general damp over men's minds and faces upon some of the officers of the army, being about making a remonstrance against Charles Stewart or any single person. But at noon it was told that the general had put a stop to it, so all was well again. Here I met with Jasper, who was to look for me to bring me to my Lord at the lobby. Whither sending a note to my Lord, he comes out to me, and gives me direction to look after getting some money for him from the Admiralty, seeing that things are so unsafe that he would not lay out a farthing for the state till he had received some money of theirs. Home about 2 o'clock, and took my wife by land to Paternoster Row, to buy some paragon for a petticoat, and so home again. In my way meeting Mr. Moore, who went home with me while I ate a bit, and so back to Whitehall again, both of us. He waited at the Council for Mr. Crewe. I to the Admiralty, where I got the order for the money, and have taken care for the getting of it assigned upon Mr. Hutchinson, Treasurer for the Navy, against to-morrow. Hence going home I met with Mr. King, that belonged to the Treasurers at War, and took him to Harper's, who told me that he and the rest of his fellows are cast out of office by the new Treasurers. This afternoon some of the officers of the army and some of the Parliament had a conference at Whitehall to make all right again, but I know not what is done. This noon I met at the Dog Tavern Captain Philip Holland, with whom I advised how to make some advantage of my Lord's going to sea, which he told me might be by having of 5 or 6 servants entered on board, and I to give them what wages I pleased, and so their pay to be mine. He was also very urgent to have me take the Secretary's place that my Lord did proffer me. At the same time in comes Mr. Wade and Mr. Sterry, Secretary to the Plenipotentiary in Denmark, who brought the news of the death of the King of Sweden at Gothenburg, the 3rd of the last month, and he told me what a great change he found when he came in here, the secluded members being restored. He also spoke very freely of Mr. Wade's profit, which he made while he was in Zealand, how he did believe that he cheated Mr. Powell, and that he made above £500 on the voyage, which Mr. Wade did very angrily deny, but I believe he was guilty enough. 9th. To my Lord at his lodging, and came to Westminster with him in the coach, with Mr. Dudley with him, and he in the Painted Chamber, walked a good while, and I telling him that I was willing and ready to go with him to sea. He agreed that I should, and advised me what to write to Mr. Downing about it, which I did at my office, that by my Lord's desire I offered that my place might for a while be supplied by Mr. Moore, and that I and my security should be bound by the same bond for him. I went and dined at Mr. Crewe's, where Mr. Hawley comes to me, and I told him the business, and shewed him the letter promising him £20 a year, which he liked very well of. I did the same to Mr. Moore, which he also took for a courtesy. In the afternoon by coach, taking Mr. Butler with me to the Navy Office, about the £500 for my Lord, which I am promised to have to-morrow morning. Then by coach back again, and at Whitehall, at the Council Chamber, spoke with my Lord, and got him to sign the acquittance for the £500, and he also told me that he had spoke to Mr. Blackburn to put off Mr. Creed, and that I should come to him for direction in the employment. After this, Mr. Butler and I to Harper's, where we sat and drank for 2 hours till 10 at night. The old woman she was drunk, and began to talk foolishly in the commendation of her son James. Home and to bed. All night troubled in my thoughts how to order my business upon this great change with me, that I could not sleep. And being overheated with drink, I made a promise the next morning to drink no strong drink this week, for I find that it makes me sweat, and puts me quite out of order. This day it was resolved that the writs do go out in the name of the keepers of the liberty, and I hear that it is resolved privately that a treaty be offered with the King, and that Monk did check his soldiers highly for what they did yesterday. 10th. In the morning went to my father's, whom I took in his cutting-house, and there I told him my resolution to go to sea with my Lord, and consulted with him how to dispose of my wife, and we resolved of letting her be at Mr. Bowyer's. Thence to the Treasurer of the Navy, where I received £500 for my Lord, and having left £200 of it with Mr. Rawlinson at his house for Shepley, I went with the rest to the Sun Tavern on Fish Street Hill, where Mr. Hill, Stevens, and Mr. Hayter of the Navy Office had invited me, where we had good discourse, and a fine breakfast of Mr. Hayter. Then by coach home, where I took occasion to tell my wife of my going to sea, who was much troubled at it, and was with some dispute at last willing to continue at Mr. Bowyer's in my absence. After this to see Mrs. Jem, and paid her maid £7, and then to Mr. Blackburn, who told me what Mr. Creed did say upon the news of my coming into his place, and that he did propose to my Lord that there should be 2 secretaries, which made me go to Sir H. Wright's, where my Lord dined, and spoke with him about it, but he seemed not to agree to the motion. Hither W. Howe comes to me, and so to Westminster. In the way he told me what I was to provide, and so forth against my going. He went with me to my office, whither also Mr. Madge comes half-foxed, and played the fool upon the violin that made me weary. Then to Whitehall, and so home, and set many of my things in order against my going. My wife was late making of caps for me, and the wench making an end of a pair of stockings that she was knitting of. So to bed. 11th Sunday. All the day busy, without my band on, putting up my books and things in order to my going to sea. At night my wife and I went to my father's to supper, where J. Norton and Chas. Glascock supped with us, and after supper home, where the wench had provided all things against to-morrow to wash, and so to bed, where I much troubled with my cold and coughing. 12th. This day the wench rose at 2 in the morning to wash, and my wife and I lay talking a great while. I by reason of my cold could not tell how to sleep. My wife and I to the Exchange, where we bought a great many things, where I left her and went into London, and at Beddles the bookseller's at the Temple Gate I paid £12 10s. 6d. for Mr. Fuller by his direction. So came back, and at Wilkinson's found Mr. Shepley and some sea people, as the cook of the Naseby and others, at dinner. Then to the White Horse in King Street, where I got Mr. Buddle's horse to ride to Huntsmore to Mr. Bowyer's, where I found him and all well, and willing to have my wife come and board with them while I was at sea, which was the business I went about. Here I lay and took a thing for my cold, namely a spoonful of honey and a nutmeg scraped into it by Mr. Bowyer's direction, and so took it into my mouth, which I found did do me much good. 13th. It rained hard, and I got up early, and got to London by 8 o'clock at my Lord's lodgings, who told me that I was to be Secretary, and Creed to be Deputy Treasurer to the Fleet, at which I was troubled, but I could not help it. After that to my father's to look after things, and so at my shoemaker's and others. At night to Whitehall, where I met with Simons and Llewellyn at drink with them at Robert's at Whitehall. Then to the Admiralty, where I talked with Mr. Creed till the brothers, and they were very seemingly willing and glad that I have the place, since my Lord would dispose of it otherwise than to them. Home and to bed. This day the Parliament voted all that had been done by the former Rump against the House of Lords be void, and to-night that the writs go out without any qualification. Things seem very doubtful what will be the end of all, for the Parliament seems to be strong for the King, while the soldiers do all talk against. 14th. To my Lord, where infinity of applications to him and to me. To my great trouble, my Lord gives me all the papers that was given to him, to put in order and give him an account of them. Here I got half a piece of a person of Mr. Wright's recommending to my Lord to be preacher of the Speaker frigate. I went hence to St. James's, and Mr. Pierce the surgeon with me, to speak with Mr. Clark, Monk's secretary, about getting some soldiers removed out of Huntingdon to Arundel, which my Lord told me he did to do a courtesy to the town, that he might have the greater interest in them, in the choice of the next Parliament. Not that he intends to be chosen himself, but that he might have Mr. G. Montague and my Lord Mandeville chose there, in spite of the Bernards. This done, where I saw General Monk, and methought he seemed a dull heavy man, he and I to Whitehall, where with Llewellyn we dined at Marsh's. Coming home, telling my wife what we had to dinner, she had a mind to some cabbage, and I sent for some, and she had it. Went to the Admiralty, where a strange thing, how I am already courted by the people. This morning, among others that came to me, I hired a boy of Jenkins of Westminster and Burr to be my clerk. This night I went to Mr. Creed's chamber, where he gave me the former book of the proceedings in the Fleet and the Seal. Then to Harper's, where old Beard was, and I took him by coach to my Lord's, but he was not at home, but afterwards I found him out at Sir H. Wright's. Thence by coach, it raining hard, to Mrs. Jem, where I stayed a while, and so home, and late in the night put up my things in a sea chest that Mr. Shepley lent me, and so to bed. 15th. Early packing up my things to be sent by cart with the rest of my Lord's. So to Will's, where I took leave of some of my friends. Here I met Tom Alcock, one that went to school with me at Huntingdon, but I had not seen him these 16 years. So in the hall paid and made even with Mrs. Mitchell. Afterwards met with old Beale, and at the Axe paid him this quarter to Lady Day next. In the afternoon Dick Matthews comes to dine, and I went and drank with him at Harper's. So into London by water, and in Fish Street my wife and I bought a bit of salmon for 8d, and went to the Sun Tavern and ate it, where I did promise to give her all that I have in the world but my books, in case I should die at sea. From thence homewards. In the way my wife bought linen for 3 smocks and other things. I went to my Lord's and spoke with him. So home with Mrs. Jem by coach, and then home to my own house. From thence to the Fox in King Street to supper on a brave turkey of Mr. Hawley's, with some friends of his there, Will Bower, etc. After supper I went to Westminster Hall, and the Parliament sat till 10 at night, thinking and being expected to dissolve themselves to-day, but they did not. Great talk to-night that the discontented officers did think this night to make a stir, but prevented. To the Fox again. Home with my wife, and to bed extraordinary sleepy. 16th. No sooner out of bed, but troubled with abundance of clients, seamen. My landlord Banley's man came to me by my direction yesterday, for I was there at his house as I was going to London by water, and I paid him rent for my house for this quarter ending at Lady Day, and took an acquittance that he wrote me from his master. Then to Mr. Shepley, to the Rhenish Tavern house, where Mr. Pym the tailor was, and gave us a morning draught and a neat's tongue. Home, and with my wife to London, we dined at my father's, where Joyce Norton and Mr. Armiger dined also. After dinner my wife took leave of them, in order to her going tomorrow to Huntsmore. In my way home I went to the chapel in Chancery Lane to bespeak papers of all sorts, and other things belonging to writing against my voyage. So home, where I spent an hour or two about my business in my study. Thence to the Admiralty, and stayed a while, so home again, where Will Bowyer came to tell us that he would bear my wife company in the coach tomorrow. Then to Westminster Hall, where I heard how the Parliament had this day dissolved themselves, and did pass very cheerfully through the hall, and the Speaker without his mace. The whole hall was joyful thereat, as well as themselves, and now they begin to talk loud of the King. To-night I am told that yesterday, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, one came with a ladder to the Great Exchange, and wiped with a brush the inscription that was upon King Charles, and that there was a great bonfire made in the Exchange, and people called out, "God bless King Charles II." From the hall I went home to bed, very sad in mind to part with my wife, but God's will be done. 17th. This morning bade adieu in bed to the company of my wife. We rose, and I gave my wife some money to serve her for a time, and what papers of consequence I had. Then I left her to get ready, and went to my Lord's with my boy Eleazer to my Lord's lodging and Mr. Crews. Here I had much business with my Lord, and papers, great store, given me by my Lord to dispose of as of the rest. After that with Mr. Moore home to my house, and took my wife by coach to the Chequer in Holborn, where after we had drank, etc., she took coach, and so farewell. I stayed behind with Tom Alcock and Mr. Anderson, my old chamber fellow at Cambridge, his brother, and drank with them there, who were come to me thither about one that would have a place at sea. Thence with Mr. Hawley to dinner at Mr. Crews. After dinner to my own house, where all things were put up into the dining room and locked up, and my wife took the keys along with her. This day, in the presence of Mr. Moore, who made it, and Mr. Hawley, I did, before I went out with my wife, seal my will to her, whereby I did give all that I have in the world but my books, which I give to my brother John, excepting only French books, which my wife is to have. In the evening at the Admiralty I met my Lord there, and got a commission for Williamson to be captain of the Harp frigate, and afterwards went by coach, taking Mr. Cripps with me to my Lord, and got him to sign it at table, as he was at supper. And so to Westminster back again with him with me, who had a great desire to go to sea, and my Lord told me that he would do him any favour. So I went home with him to his mother's house by me in Axe Yard, where I found Dr. Clodius' wife, and sat there talking and hearing of old Mrs. Crisp playing of her old lessons upon the harpsichord, till it was time to go to bed. After that to bed, and Lord, her son, lay with me in the best chamber in her house, which indeed was finely furnished. 18th. I rose early and went to the barber's, Jervis, in Palace Yard, and I was trimmed by him, and afterwards drank with him a cup or two of ale, and did begin to hire his man to go with me to sea. Then to my Lord's lodging, where I found Captain Williamson, and gave him his commission to be captain of the Harp, and he gave me a piece of gold and 20 shillings in silver. So to my own house, where I stayed a while, and then to dinner with Mr. Shepley at my Lord's lodgings. After that to Mr. Mossum's, where he made a very gallant sermon upon Pray for the life of the King and the King's son, Ezra 6:10. From thence to Mr. Crew's, but my Lord not being within, I did not stay, but went away, and met with Mr. Woodfine, who took me to an alehouse in Drury Lane, and we sat and drank together, and ate toasted cakes, which were very good, and we had a great deal of mirth with the mistress of the house about them. From thence homewards, and called at Mr. Blagrave's, where I took up my note that he had of mine for 40 shillings, which he 2 years ago did give me as a pawn while he had my lute, so that all things are even between him and I. So to Mrs. Crisp, where she and her daughter and son and I sat talking till 10 o'clock at night, I giving them the best advice that I could concerning their son, how he should go to sea, and so to bed. 19th. Early to my Lord, where infinity of business to do, which makes my head full, and indeed for these 2 or 3 days I have not been without a great many cares and thoughts concerning them. After that to the Admiralty, where a good while with Mr. Blackburn, who told me that it was much to be feared that the King would come in, for all good men and good things were now discouraged. Thence to Wilkinson's, where Mr. Shepley and I dined, and while we were at dinner my Lord Monk's Life Guard come by with the Serjeant at Arms before them, with 2 proclamations that all cavaliers do depart the town, but the other that all officers that were lately disbanded should do the same. The last of which Mr. R. Creed, I remember, said that he looked upon it as if they had said that all God's people should depart the town. Thence with some sea officers to the Swan, where we drank wine, till one comes to pay me some money from Worcester, viz. £25. His name is Wilday. I sat in another room and took my money, and drank with him till the rest of my company were gone, and so we parted. Going home the water was high, and so I got Crockford to carry me over it. So home and left my money there. All the discourse nowadays is that the King will come again, and for all I see it is the wishes of all, and all do believe that it will be so. My mind is still much troubled for my poor wife, but I hope that this undertaking will be worth my pains. To Whitehall in state about business at the Admiralty late, then to Tony Robins, where Captain Stokes, Mr. Luddington, and others were, and I did solicit the Captain for Lord Crisp, who gave me a promise that he would entertain him. After that to Mrs. Crisp's, where Dr. Clodius and his wife were, he very merry with drink. We played at cards late, and so to bed. This day my Lord dined at my Lord Mayor's, and Jasper was made drunk, which my Lord was very angry at. 20th. This morning I rose early, and went to my house, to put things in a little order against my going, which I conceive will be to-morrow, the weather still very rainy. After that to my Lord, where I found very great deal of business, he giving me all letters and papers that come to him about business, for me to give him account of when we come on shipboard. Hence with Captain Isham by coach to Whitehall to the Admiralty. He and I and Chetwin, Doling, and Llewellyn dined together at Marsh's at Whitehall. So to the Bullhead, whither W. Simons comes to us, and I gave them my foy against my going to sea. And so we took leave one of another, they promising me to write to me to sea. Hither comes Pym's boy, by my direction, with 2 monteers, for me to take my choice of, and I chose the saddest colour, and left the other for Mr. Shepley. Hence by coach to London, and took a short melancholy leave of my father and mother, without having them to drink, or say anything of business one to another. And indeed I had a fear upon me I should scarce ever see my mother again, she having a great cold then upon her. Then to Westminster, where by reason of rain and an easterly wind, the water was so high that there was boats rowed in King Street, and all our yard was drowned, that one could not go to my house, so as no man has seen the like almost, most houses full of water. Then back by coach to my Lord's, where I met Mr. Shepley, who stayed with me waiting for my Lord's coming in till very late. Then he and I and William Howe went with our swords to bring my Lord home from Sir H. Wright's. He resolved to go to-morrow if the wind ceased. Shepley and I home by coach, I to Mrs. Crisp's, who had sat over a good supper long looking for me. So we sat talking and laughing till it was very late, and so Lord and I to bed. 21st. To my Lord's, but the wind very high against us, and the weather bad. We could not go to-day. Here I did very much business, and then to my Lord Widdrington's from my Lord, with his desire that he might have the disposal of the writs of the Cinque Ports. My Lord was very civil to me, and called for wine, and writ a long letter in answer. Thence I went to a tavern over against Mr. Pierce's with Judge Advocate Fowler and Mr. Burr, and sat and drank with them 2 or 3 pints of wine. After that to Mr. Crew's again, and gave my Lord an account of what I had done, and so about my business to take leave of my father and mother, which by a mistake I have put down yesterday. Thence to Westminster to Crisp's, where we were very merry. The old woman sent for supper for me, and gave me a handkerchief with strawberry buttons on it, and so to bed. 22nd. Up very early, and set things in order at my house, and so took leave of Mrs. Crisp and her daughter, who was in bed, and of Mrs. Hunt. Then to my Lord's lodging at the gate, and did so there, where Mr. Hawley came to me, and I gave him the key of my house to keep, and he went with me to Mr. Crew's, and there I took my last leave of him. But the weather continuing very bad, my Lord would not go to-day. My Lord spent this morning private in sealing of his last will and testament with Mr. W. Montague. After that I went forth about my own business, to buy a pair of riding grey serge stockings, and sword and belt and hose, and after that took Wotton and Brigden to the Pope's Head Tavern in Chancery Lane, where Gilbert Holland and Shelston were, and we dined and drank a great deal of wine, and they paid all. Strange how these people do now promise me anything, one a rapier, the other a vessel of wine or a gun, and one offered me his silver hatband to do him a courtesy. I pray God to keep me from being proud or too much lifted up hereby. After that to Westminster, and took leave of Kate Sturpin, who was very sorry to part with me, and after that of Mr. George Montague, and received my warrant of Mr. Blackburn to be secretary to the 2 generals of the fleet. Then to take my leave of the clerks of the council, and thence Doling and Llewellyn would have me go with them to Mount's chamber, where we sat and talked, and then I went away. So to my Lord, in my way meeting Chetburn and Swan, and bade them farewell, where I lay all night with Mr. Andrews. This day Mr. Shepley went away on board, and I sent my boy with him. This day also Mrs. Jemimah went to Marrowbone, so I could not see her. Mr. Moore being out of town to-night, I could not take leave of him, nor speak to him about business, which troubled me much. I left my small case therefore with Mr. Andrews for him. 23rd. Up early, carried my Lord's will in a black box to Mr. William Montague for him to keep for him. Then to the barber's and put on my cravat there. So to my Lord again, who was almost ready to be gone, and had stayed for me. Hither came Gilbert Holland, and brought me a stick rapier, and Shelston a sugar loaf, and had brought his wife, who he said was a very pretty woman, to the Ship Tavern hard by for me to see, but I could not go. Young Reeve also brought me a little perspective glass, which I bought for my Lord. It cost me 8 shillings. So after that my Lord in Sir H. Wright's coach with Captain Isham, Mr. Thomas, John Crew, W. Howe, and I in a hackney to the Tower, where the barges stayed for us. My Lord and the Captain in one, and W. Howe and I, etc., in the other, to the Long Reach, where the Swiftsure lay at anchor. In our way we saw the great breach which the late high water had made, to the loss of many £1,000s, to the people about Limehouse. Soon as my Lord on board, the guns went off bravely from the ships, and a little while after comes the Vice Admiral Lawson, and seemed very respectful to my Lord, and so did the rest of the commanders of the frigates that were thereabouts. I to the cabin allotted for me, which was the best that any had that belonged to my Lord. I got out some things out of my chest for writing, and to work presently, Mr. Burr and I both. I supped at the deck table with Mr. Shepley. We were late writing of orders for the getting of ships ready, etc., and also making of others to all the seaports between Hastings and Yarmouth, to stop all dangerous persons that are going or coming between Flanders and there. After that to bed in my cabin, which was but short. However I made shift with it, and slept very well, and the weather being good I was not sick at all yet. I know not what I shall be. 24th. At work hard all the day, writing letters to the council, etc. This day Mr. Creed came on board, and dined very boldly with my Lord, but he could not get a bed there. At night Captain Isham, who had been at Gravesend all last night and to-day, came and brought Mr. Lucy, one acquainted with Mrs. Pierce, with whom I had been at her house. I drank with him in the captain's cabin, but my business could not stay with him. I dispatched many letters to-day abroad, and it was late before we could get to bed. Mr. Shepley and Howe supped with me in my cabin. The boy Eleazer flung down a can of beer upon my papers, which made me give him a box of the ear, it having all spoiled my papers and cost me a great deal of work. So to bed. 25th, Lord's day. About 2 o'clock in the morning letters came from London by our coxswain, so they waked me, but I would not rise, but bid him stay till morning, which he did, and then I rose and carried them in to my Lord, who read them a bed. Among the rest there was the writ and mandate for him to dispose to the Cinque Ports for choice of Parliament men. There was also one for me from Mr. Blackburne, who with his own hand superscribes it to S.P. Esquire, of which God knows I was not a little proud. After that I wrote a letter to the Clerk of Dover Castle to come to my Lord about issuing of those writs. About 10 o'clock Mr. Ibbot, at the end of the long table, begun to pray and preach, and indeed made a very good sermon upon the duty of all Christians to be steadfast in faith. After that Captain Cuttance and I had oysters, my Lord being in his cabin, not intending to stir out to-day. After that up into the great cabin above to dinner with the Captain, where was Captain Isham and all the officers of the ship. I took place of all but the Captain's. After dinner I wrote a great many letters to my friends at London. After that, sermon again, at which I slept, God forgive me. After that, it being a fair day, I walked with the Captain upon the deck, talking. At night I supped with him, and after that had orders from my Lord about some business to be done against tomorrow, which I sat up late, and did, and then to bed. 26th. This day it is 2 years since it pleased God that I was cut of the stone at Mrs. Turner's in Salisbury Court, and did resolve while I lived to keep it a festival, as I did the last year at my house, and for ever to have Mrs. Turner and her company with me. But now it pleases God that I am where I am, and so prevented to do it openly. Only within my soul I can and do rejoice, and bless God, being at this time blessed be his holy name, in as good health as ever I was in my life. This morning I rose early, and went about making of an establishment of the whole fleet, and a list of all the ships, with the number of men and guns. About an hour after that, we had a meeting of the principal commanders and seamen, to proportion out the number of these things. After that to dinner, there being very many commanders on board. All the afternoon very many orders were made, till I was very weary. At night Mr. Shepley and W. Howe came and brought some bottles of wine, and some things to eat in my cabin, where we were very merry, remembering the day of being cut for the stone. Captain Cuttance came afterwards, and sat drinking a bottle of wine till 11, a kindness he do not usually do the greatest officer in the ship. After that to bed. 27th. Early in the morning, at making a fair new establishment of the fleet to send to the Council. This morning the wind came about, and we fell into the Hope. And in our passing by the Vice-Admiral, he and the rest of the frigates with him did give us abundance of guns, and we them, so much that the report of them broke all the windows in my cabin, and broke off the iron bar that was upon it, to keep anybody from creeping in at the scuttle. This noon I sat the first time with my Lord at table since my coming to sea. All the afternoon exceeding busy in writing of letters and orders. In the afternoon Sir Harry Wright came on board us, about his business of being chosen Parliament man. My Lord brought him to see my cabin, when I was hard a writing. At night supped with my Lord too, with the Captain, and after that to work again till it be very late. So to bed. 28th. This morning and the whole day busy, and that the more because Mr. Burr was about his own business all the day at Gravesend. At night there was a gentleman very well bred, his name was Baines, going for Flushing, who spoke French and Latin very well, brought by direction from Captain Clark hither, as a prisoner, because he called out of the vessel that he went in, "Where is your king? We have done our business. Vive le roi." He confessed himself a cavalier in his heart, and that he and his whole family had fought for the king, but that he was then drunk, having been all night taking his leave at Gravesend the night before, and so could not remember what it was that he said, but in his words and carriage showed much of a gentleman. My Lord had a great kindness for him, but did not think it safe to release him, but commanded him to be used civilly. So he was taken to the master's cabin, and had supper there. In the meantime I wrote a letter to the Council about him, and an order for the vessel to be sent for back that he was taken out of. But a while after he sent a letter down to my Lord, which my Lord did like very well, and did advise with me what was best to be done. So I put in something to my Lord, and then to the Captain, that the gentleman was to be released, and the letter stopped, which was done. So I went up and sat and talked with him in Latin and French, and drank a bottle or two with him, and about 11 at night he took boat again, and so, God bless him. Thence I to my cabin, and to bed. This day we had news of the election at Huntingdon for Bernard and Pedley, at which my Lord was much troubled for his friends missing of it. 29th. We lie still a little below Gravesend. At night Mr. Shepley returned from London, and told us of several elections for the next Parliament, that the King's effigies was new making to be set up in the Exchange again. This evening was a great whispering of some of the Vice-Admiral's captains that they were dissatisfied, and did intend to fight themselves, to oppose the General. But it was soon hushed, and the Vice-Admiral did wholly deny any such thing. and protested to stand by the General. At night Mr. Shepley, W. Howe, and I supped in my cabin. So up to the master's cabin, where we sat talking, and then to bed. 30th. I was saluted in the morning with 2 letters, from some that I had done a favour to, which brought me in each a piece of gold. This day, while my Lord and we were at dinner, the Naseby came in sight towards us, and at last came to anchor close by us. After dinner my Lord and many others went on board her, where everything was out of order, and a new chimney made for my Lord in his bedchamber, which he was much pleased with. My Lord in his discourse discovered a great deal of love to this ship. 31st. This morning Captain Giles of the Wexford came on board, for whom I got commission from my Lord to be commander of the ship. Upon the doing thereof, he was to make the 20s. Piece that he sent me yesterday up £5, wherefore he sent me a bill that he did owe me £4, which I sent my boy to Gravesend with him, and he did give the boy £4 for me, and the boy gave him the bill under his hand. This morning Mr. Hill, that lives in Axe Yard, was here on board with the Vice Admiral. I did give him a bottle of wine, and was exceedingly satisfied of the power that I have to make my friends welcome. Many orders to make all the afternoon. At night Mr. Shepley, Howe, Ibbett, and I supped in my cabin together. End of March.